No. I wouldn't take Rage of Sigmar seriously in any regard.
No,
because I know
that's
Joe
the joke.
Pagano personally.
Joe Pagano, I don't. I've only met him in passing a couple times. I've been trying to get him on RantCast for a while. But Jacob Berry, I do know, and that guy's like. That guy just, like. I don't know if he has a serious setting. I've never had it.
No, like, it's a shtick. They hide the fact that they are some of the nicest people on Earth by trying to behave like assholes.
It's true. It's true. All right, Tomb Dad's in chat. That's all I need to get going. Good evening, everybody. I am the most dangerous man in Age of Sigmar, the magical Mr. Mephisto. I'm joined tonight by two guests, two paragons of Pointy Aelf kind. Two very, very, if like, they're basically the Mephistos of, like, the way I was with Osiric Bone Reapers, they've been that way with Lumineth. Every single one of these drip feeds has just been straight into the cerebellum, all the pleasure centers of the brain, all the serotonin released. On my left, you've got Brice, aka the proprietor of Ragnarok. The Wapaka 2.0, as it were. And in the middle, you've got Martin Orlando, formerly Good Painter Stormcast man, but now I think it's going to be Good Painter Lumineth man. Like, it rolls off the tongue, I think, a little bit better. What do you think?
Hello, friends. I'm sure Haywa will come up with something the next time we play each other at Adepticon.
It's true. It's true. That's actually, like, he was on the episode just before, he was actually on 42, so this is RantCast 43. As some of you become aware, we will be talking about all of the elves tonight. We're going to be talking about Lumineth. We've had two sort of release, previews. One of them just kind of more art in the vein of what we've already had, and we're going to kind of recap a lot of that tonight. We're going to talk about the one rule we've seen. And honestly, this if you came here for like fair and balanced commentary on elves, you're gonna get
just
it.
Leave now.
No, I was gonna lie to them. I was gonna say they're gonna get it because I will be a neutral arbiter. but no, you probably listen to Brice. This is propaganda. This is propaganda. If you're already hyped about elves, or if you haven't made up your mind, you're in a good place. If you hate them, you're wrong. Continue to listen and get angrier because I need that salt. I've got low cholesterol and I could use the salt. So,
hey, are we gonna get a 3 corgi shot?
Mochi's downstairs. I'll send it.
Okay.
I'm back at my own apartment. My corgi is at my parents' house. Feel free to tag my mom on Twitter.
We lied to the world.
Feel free to tag my mother on Twitter, and she'll post pictures of Casey.
There you go. This would have been the triple corgi episode too, which I think is an Age of Sigmar record. 3 corgis in one show would have been, but two and a half corgis we'll call it instead. Which is still a record. So we've actually got Holy Hammer Hearn in chat there.
Steve.
Yeah. Steve's there. The Holy Havoc Holy Wars TO, which I haven't been to Holy Wars yet. I will get there. But Holy Havoc was totally my favorite tournament. Sorry Brendan, second favorite. but it's just fantastic event. So thanks for joining us, Holy Hammer Hearn there. Wow.
Oh,
there's Brendan. No, it's difficult to describe that from a personal achievement, Brew City was my favorite. Because it was in my backyard. I won the sports award there. I top 10'd. It was a lot of this achievement moments. But Havoc was one of those moments where I need to step my game up, and I'm a guy who always chases personal betterment. And go to Adepticon. I don't walk away from Adepticon going oh, I got to get better. I'm yeah, that was a good weekend. Because it's so much. For me, Adepticon's the spectacle of going to Adepticon, playing the 5 games in a weekend, and meeting everybody, seeing everybody, walking around the vendor hall, doing all that stuff, that spectacle. But Havoc, I walked into that room and I'm I am out of my depth. You actually won a hobby award at that Havoc. And,
I did, yeah.
And then you... go ahead.
I was about to say, it's Brice first.
I just acknowledged I did win. I did win. I think the Pinnacle Award at the. If you're talking about this year's Holy Havoc, right?
Havoc, you won a hobby.
So I won
You went back
Warlord
to
of
back.
Havoc.
You went back to
Back
back.
to back.
Oh
Back
my
to
god.
back.
Is that 3? You've had 3 Havoc.
Should I just do
Yeah,
that
just
a
do
little
that,
bit
yeah.
higher? There, okay.
Yeah. So you went back to back to back. You've had 3 in a row Havoc or Holy Awards for hobbies.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
If I may add, just to tie this tangent nicely, the first ever Age of Sigmar tournament I went to, like during the dark ages of year 1, where we weren't quite sure where Age of Sigmar was going, I saw on the main Age of Sigmar Facebook group an advertisement for the very first Holy Wars. And it was like a 3-hour flight and then a 45-minute car ride to the middle of a cornfield. And that's
Yeah.
Well, I was completely out of my element. I had just only gone to events in New Jersey, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. It brought me close to the Midwest community for the first time, and I wasn't able to come back until Holy Wars the last year, and then I got to play my 5 favorite people from the Midwest. It should be noted that I totally destroyed Vince in our long-awaited game. He will say otherwise. But I totally destroyed his daughter's king.
This is
I got off. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Finish it.
Yeah, and I did win an award for best painted army at that event. It should be only because Vince already won an award, and you can only win 1 award per person.
Hey, well, the good news is it's not in the middle of nowhere in a cornfield anymore. It's in Naperville, which is just outside of proper Chicago, and a much nicer venue. So,
well,
I already liked the venue, to be honest. So if it's
it was just so small, cramped in there. But it's upgraded.
You don't know
now.
cramped until you run a tournament in Brooklyn when there's 17 people in an office cubicle playing Age of Sigmar for 7 hours.
All right.
Anyway,
the hat upgrade.
Thank you for putting on a fantastic event, Steve. I really miss you guys. I look forward to seeing you next year.
It just occurred to me that since we are doing the Aelfisode, I need to step up my hat game. Hang on one moment.
Oh, I should have thought this through.
Can we?
I don't own any elf.
All right, there we go.
I should have worn my techless pants.
Perfect.
Stood up the whole time.
All right. So there we go. That's a little visual comedy for those of you on the pure audio format. So I've got my cheese head on top of my baseball cap on top of my headset. So I now feel adequately equipped to talk about some elves. We'll see how long I can keep this up for. Good God, now I have to leave. All right, so we got the cheese head equipped. We're good to go. Who wants to lead us off here? So I guess I'll set a little bit of background first. So not this previous weekend, but the weekend before, essentially right when Adepticon was supposed to be going on, we had our Adepticon at Home event. A ton of content creators got together, helped put out some content. It really was about the community focus. Elves and cheeseheads, fuck me. So we did that, and then kind of in the middle of it, we got this first reveal. This first reveal was, I'd say that it was immediately sort of like there was a harsh divide.
Yeah,
now,
drew a line.
Yeah. This was the one that really drew the line in the community. I think we've been bantering about it / discussing / trolling about it since. But makes every day up here tougher than I'd like, Steve. But yeah, pardon me. So, basically, this is the reveal that we got the Avalanor, the Stoneheart King, and Alarith, Spirit of the Mountain. I suspect this is a dual box build. I suspect it's going to be a little bit of a named hero and then like a Spirit of Durthu type situation. You guys, thoughts? Any?
Yeah, like a great unclean one in a Rodigus or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that type of thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah. No, it should be noted that there are the Alarith Stone Guard. They've given a lot of clues about the names already. Mm-hmm. I've been talking on Facebook about how since they started making elves in the new setting, they gave race names for the Melusai, the Kinarai. It usually ends in an I, the letter I. Mm-hmm. The Namarti, the Kurnathi, and now a lot of the infantry elves, or like the Dawn Riders, they're called the Vanari. And I assume, though this has not been confirmed yet, that that is the race name for the Lumineth. But then you have like your casts, the breaking down of certain things.
Okay.
So you have the Ullrith Stone Mage, which is the mage with the big horns.
Right, the one
and then
on
you
the...
have like this, right, and then you have this recurring Ullrith with the Cow Titan and the Swordmaster proxy.
Right, right. So this is where and I mean, me as a neutral arbiter who will not be playing elves, I can respect the love I've seen for this army so far. I get the heat too, because I remember at my time, like when OBR were coming out, before people found out they were great and everyone suddenly loved them, it was the Joker skeleton faces, Joker skeleton. That was the thing that everyone like latched onto and hated about my army, was like they hated the Jokers. And then you had like Galaxy Nad underneath the Harvester. You had the guy with the huge, and you had the Galaxy Brain memes. From that.
Yeah, with the chair.
Yeah. Yes, the guy with the chair. Like, so you had all these like memes coming. So like Ossiarch Bone Reapers caught it too, but it felt like that wasn't as completely polarizing as Lumineth. When you guys saw this sort of first weekend of reveals, first Brice, then Martin, what were your reactions?
I literally ran around my house in excitement. Like I completely understand what people are saying, but at the same time, no. But just look at it. Like it's so small on my screen, but it's like it's completely unique. It's super cool, and it's something entirely different. And like I said last time, there was one thing that I really wanted, something that I could never imagine, and I had no idea what it was. Mm-hmm. Here you go. So I love it. I think it's super. It's just perfect, man.
Well, it does that thing, and this is one of those turned up to 11 moments for me, where like they took something and they took it to an extreme, and I think it's really cool. Personally, like if we just like put a bubble around even talking about elves to begin with, I don't think you can actually say this is a bad sculpt or bad art.
Right.
This is awesome. And I do think they do enough to tie in one to the elves. The armor reads very elven to me. Like this is like the other thing is I think it's got a little bit of a nod toward the towards Wraiths from 40K, that game I know nothing about.
Wraiths?
Yeah, what are they called? The big walking mech things in elves. Wraithguard, yeah. Yeah, they've got a little bit of a... Yeah, they've got a little bit of... I think they've got a little bit of a visual nod to that with, like, the spindly limbs and, like, bigger torso up top. Like, I think there's a little bit of a visual nod.
There's a lot of hallmarks in this army similar to Eldar, but we'll get into that when I do the...
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later. And so I think that's a nice tie-in. But one I haven't heard talked about a lot, I've heard the, like, lazy version of it, which is calling this thing the Beaver of Secrets. Like, with Ossiarch Bone Reapers, they kind of said in the... in some of the teasers, take a drink if we're already talking about it. They said that, like, basically that the one model was a dark Xantos, the Liege Cavalos named character, was a dark mirror of like Vandus Hammerhand or something like that. I think it was Vandus.
Yes.
I think this is like kind of goes the other way. This is a light mirror of a Keeper of Secrets. Maybe that's just me trying to like grasp at straws. But like at the very least in a very visual sense.
It is a vaguely similar silhouette.
Yeah, like if you rub your eyes really hard and before everything comes back into focus and you look at it. So I think that there's some really cool subtlety with this sculpt, basically, is what I'm saying. That is very welcomed, personally. And then you add in the elven thing, and I'm actually fine with them worshipping, like, the proto-elementals. Like, they tried worshipping a flame before, kind of screwed that up. Now they've got these, like, 4 elementals. It's sort of a more oneliness connected to the universe type thing going on. I really dig it, man. So Brice, or not Brice, Martin, what was your reaction then to seeing, like, this?
So one of the things that has continued to bother me, and it's actually a little more... like prevalent here than it used to be when we were like looking at old elves. I think high elves are held back by their default color scheme. that Games Workshop gives them.
The,
It's the
white
right
and the
thing
blue.
to do. It looks better, like when you use a different medium than miniatures. Like if you look at how Warhammer elves are depicted in the various video games and comic books, etc. The color scheme, when you're allowed to give it more detail and more body, all of that white and blue and cream shows up a lot better. But when you're reading everything, they took a lot of the blue out. Like there's a lot more of just white and cream across all of the troops. I think because of how Games Workshop photographs its miniatures, it takes away from the potential that these miniatures have. In a few years' time, not even, you're going to see other people who are talented painters just take these miniatures, just replace the white with any color, or use a different backdrop, and these miniatures are going to have a whole new dimension to them that people just currently can't fathom with the limited scope that we view them. Right. Because this is how Games Workshop advertises the products to us.
Well,
otherwise, yeah, okay. In response to that,
I've heard some theories, and I should say hypotheses about, like, you know, they don't want to make their advertising painting look too good, or it can be intimidating to people who want to, like, approach the model and stuff like that.
It's mostly to show off all of the details of the model kit. To use just a good example of someone who paints with natural light would be Vince Venturella. And if you look how he paints a lot of his miniatures, if you tried to use that, like, and this is just not the style that Games Workshop wants to do because they want to sell the kit, and like that heavy metal style, which they've inherited over the decades of just like being iconic to them, personal to Games Workshop, where it's almost like a car show where you want to show all of these details by using extra artificial light. And that's fine. Just knowing is half the battle in that case of understanding why does this look a little weird. Because that was one of the main things about Techless. People felt that the depth of composition for Techless was weird. And then Games Workshop put up a video where you can see the 360 of Techless, and it changes the look of the entire miniature. And it's going to change people's minds again once they see it on the tabletop.
Well, I mean,
as for
you're right there. I feel like it just became, it actually happened with Ungors for me. Models I see on Games Workshop sites are very rarely the complete picture. When you physically, even a gray plastic sculpt of like an Ungor or like a Bestigor, once you get it in your hand, you go, oh, this is even cooler. Because you can really appreciate that, like, three-dimensional extra stuff. Sometimes it's the paint scheme. Sometimes it feels like how they photograph. They're constantly photographing stuff on white backgrounds, which is just, like, it's still, to me, as much as I love Games Workshop, feels like the amateur thing. Get a light box. Put some neutral background behind it. Not white. Come on. And then when you've got a white mini on a white background, like, you're losing some of that depth that is really going to shine.
They fixed that a little bit. Like if you actually scroll through pictures on the web store now, especially newer product, they have it like a color, like almost like a diorama photo of the kit as well. Like
well, the army shots are fantastic. Those like those full spreads they do. I haven't seen a bad army shot of any army. I mean, no matter what the models are, like those when they do those wide shots with the terrain, I guess they sculpt in house and stuff, just sort of whatever's lying around. Those are home runs. I've every army's got that one. They bring in the fog machine too. Like those are stellar.
Yep.
Those are stellar shots. But these plain white on the community site that we get to see, I don't think they do everything full justice. So if you're already on the other side of this, if you're already like, hell yeah, and this is what you see, it's going to be even sweeter in person. Is all I have to say. Go on. Continue your point. You had a point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I for me, it was a little harder to get my head around, like, say, the Stone Guard. I think when Vince was talking about like the army terrain, where it's like just take that ZCAD file and like reduce by like 12%, 12 to 15%. I think the tops of their helmets, and we'll talk about this a little more later. It's like this is just a little too big. I like the design. I like the idea of it, and elves have had something like that before. But it's the size of the guy's head. It's too big. Just shrink it a little bit.
So my cheeseheads here isn't changing your opinion?
Yeah, take that Zcat file to cheese hat and change it. By
Okay. So just like I need to wear the kid size, maybe.
Yeah. But as for the cow thing, like, and I think that's the main question, which we're waiting on lore for, like from the whole battle tome. It's like we're used to dragons and phoenixes and lions and unicorns, and why cows? And I'm still trying to answer that question, but for me, it's a lot of like introspective thinking and trying to just like decipher, like, because it's like I don't have a problem with it, but I'm always about trying to understand the art and the design. What made them choose this? And we can't answer that yet. So
yeah,
I don't mind it.
Visually
I
it
don't
looks cool.
it yet.
Visually it checks.
Yeah.
Bryce, do you have any thoughts on White Cows?
I like the. Oh, I'm sorry. Say that again.
Martin, finish your point, and then we'll have Bryce answer why he speculates maybe cows, or what his thoughts are on White Cows.
Yeah. One of the main things I do like, and this just gives me an opportunity to do more of my own thing with them, is I like the plain masks. Like Selenar has it for the Techless companion monster, and both of the Cow Titans have that white sort of porcelain mask. You can make that look really incredible really easily.
Right.
And I like that it's not actually, a cow's like head.
Yeah.
Because these are mountain spirits. We call them Cow Titans because the trailer calls them cows. They have the aspect of the bull, but we never actually see. We only see fur like on the hands and like the forearms, and they have hooves.
Yeah, on the hoof.
We never actually see. We never actually see the face of these creatures, and I don't think they're supposed to be animals. They're supposed to be spirits, like of nature, and like these divine, like otherworldly spirits. And I think you can do a lot with that.
Even like as I'm staring at this mask itself, like it reads a little bit like a lion to me. It's got the big horns, but you've got this like sort of fanned out mane coming off of what could be its cheeks and stuff like that. Like I think it's just some sort of proto animal when it gets right down to it. And if I can go like one step further with Beasts of Chaos, Cygors, Gorgons, both home runs of kits, they're amazing. Keeper of Secrets has like a cow like vibe to it. Home run, like Games Workshop just hits home runs when they try to make cows. Is all I'm saying. like they just get up to the plate and they just can't strike out when they try to make a cow. Like I don't know if it's like one person in their sculpting team who's just like obsessed with cows and they just grew up like drawing all the cows. Like they started with like the Chicago Bulls logo and they just drew that all the time and they just expanded from there until like they're a master of the cow iconography. Whatever it is, they crush it every time they're to the plate. So
there you go.
Whatever, man. Yeah. Bryce, what do you think? Like making when why cows, quote unquote, like in parentheses. You don't have to answer the question, but what was your reaction?
Well, I definitely think it's to be something different, right? Like, yeah, they could have done a dragon and it would have been easy and fine. Yeah. But the direction they've taken with everything that they've done that's a new piece has been something that's truly unique to them. And like we keep calling it a cow. It's not like it's a dairy cow and it's something pathetic. It's a badass bull, spirit of a mountain. Like I'm fine with it. I mean, it's an animal. It's a really threatening animal. Like I wouldn't go fuck with a bull in the backyard. So I think the reason people are so mad is because it's not a dragon or a phoenix, but we have dragons and phoenixes. So
I mean that's a like just a learning moment for everybody, which expectation is the mother of all letdown. You kind of got to go into these new armies, quote unquote 100% new armies that I've started calling them. We didn't really have a precedent for some of these armies that are coming out. The challenge, I said it early on. Oh, go on. Sounds like someone had something to say there. Just a deep breath. Okay. No. The challenge early on is how do you go for the person who grows up loving Tolkien elves? Every one of their player characters in Dungeons and Dragons is an elf or half elf. Like they read.
That's me, man.
Right.
That's me.
Right. And to go, how do you like appease them, but then make something that's totally unique and different. Now, I think they solved the riddle personally, but I hear some pushback and I hear some stuff, and I think The problem lies in expectation. That's where I think the divide is people who had expectation for these high elves these Lumineth being high elves, and people who just had no expectation. They're just like, I want freaking elves. I don't care what. Yeah.
Well, it's like Tristan, right? Like, you loved OBR because you went in thinking it was going to be New Death, and he went in thinking it was going to be Tomb Kings, and his heart was broken, and your heart was happy. It's like going in with that attitude is.
One of the arguments I've seen is that because we started with the battle line and techless, we got an old world hero, but as a ghost armor, and then we got spiritual successors to Silver Helms and Spearmen, and techless. Like, mostly people were like, techless's costume is weird. But people had this expectation that, it's like old school. This is a new kit of guys on horses, and they kind of look like the old guys on horses, and there are horses. And then we get cow titans.
But in that same preview, they had the banner with the cow, and they said that they hinted to the mountains, and like they warned everyone what was coming.
Getting a tree lord greater demon sized cow titan is new for people. It's like I'm just trying to set up what specific expectations in certain minds were set is a source of one of the dividing reasons.
Oh, and I'm not, again, I don't think that the aim of this episode is to change anyone's mind if they don't like Lumineth.
Right.
You know if you're on this hype train right now, and if you are, join us. We've got snacks. But but like I do think that there's. Vince actually, we've talked about it a couple times now. Vince said on a episode, I think that I was on Warhammer Weekly, the sort of pre-show, talked about like it's fun to like hate on an army or hate on like characters in Warhammer and stuff like that, and I agree with that. If this is your thing, but like that doesn't feel like it's the same type of hate I've been seeing. Where it's just like, look, I hate elves. If your like whole take is like I hate elves and I hope Slaanesh eats them. A new item at the buffet. Like, that kind of hate is a lot of fun. But, like, you have
story-appropriate hate.
Yeah, story-appropriate hate and, like, meme hate or what I would call in the wrestling world kayfabe hate. The kayfabe hate is okay. Hating these things, like, on a personal level and the people who are excited about it, that's not okay with me. If you love these models and then there's people out there who like don't love them and you're like shitting on them, that I haven't seen it so much with the elves, but I saw it with Ossiarch Bone Reapers, that like gloating shitting on Tomb Kings players who are like, ha ha ha, you didn't get your Tomb Kings, and like giving them the finger. Not okay. That's sort of like taking it to a personal level. We've got an army here we haven't seen before. That alone should make you feel great, though. I mean, I don't care what side you fall on. We have yet another new army for Age of Sigmar. Like, hell yeah, that's a victory. And now the Sons of Behemoth were finally like teased. Another new army for Age of Sigmar. Like, you're gonna find something that resonates with you, human. Dear listener, dear viewer. But I see strong like visceral reactions for this army on both sides.
Because this is all we have. We don't have rules yet. As soon as rules are, this whole discussion of aesthetics is going to be out the way.
Then the hate will switch. Switch to the rules.
Oh yeah, and then
it already kind of has, right? We get to fight twice.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But like that's the thing is like there was high elf hate in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It was and will always be. The models are still amazing, design and vision. Yeah, perfectly said, Herner. Perfectly said. There will be hate. It's fine with that. Like it's fine. Like people don't like elves or they do like elves. I'm not too worried about it, but I do think that Lumineth have solved that, bringing it all the way back. They really did go, here's something that reads as high elves to like me, a layman. I was like, oh yeah, those look like high elves. My big criticism of the first three kits spoiled were they look too much like high elves. The archers, I guess we got the archers a little bit later, but it was the spearmen, the cavalry, and the archers. I'm like, those are just elves. That's what my lame outsider brain said. And then like we get this sort of like fourth sort of foot troop with these Alarith Stone Guard, and I'm like, on board. Like like that was what these were the ones that were weird enough to do it for me. And that being said, I don't even think they're that particularly weird. Like you said, there, Martin, just size down the weird head part, I say just clip the top off. Honestly, if you don't like it or swap them, I've seen a Photoshop where they just swap the top of the head with the base head and they look great. Like one way or another. I mean, head swaps are the easiest thing in Age of Sigmar to do. Go ahead and grab some white lion heads or something. Like, when it gets right down to it, these are the most dynamically posed models I've seen in this range. Like, every one of them's 5 models, 5 sculpts, unique poses. Their capes are all blowing in a different direction. Like, they actually have a real dynamic vibe to them. We've got dude like, "Oh, you gonna get it?" pointing with the hammer. Like, I'm on board with these guys. These are my, dare I say, besides the Beefer of Secrets, these are my absolute favorites. Like, I really like these guys. And the fix to if I did have a problem with their helmets, which I don't, I think they're awesome. I've heard other elf players are like, "Oh, change the helmets and they're great." I'm like, no, keep the helmets. They're fantastic. Like, I'm all about the weird helmets here. But I've heard a little bit of Martin talk about these Stone Guard. Brice, what was your reaction to them? And then Martin maybe summarize it.
Top it off. Yeah,
top it off.
Yeah, so I definitely don't mind the helmets. Like, they're big pointy helmets with a bull on top. That's cool. At first I was like, hammers, that's a bit of a surprise, but you can switch that pretty easy if you don't like the hammers. And I just think, like, they're sweet. Like, I have nothing wrong with anything that they've done, and I think that I've always said it, and this is our 3rd time now, that I just wanted something different, and this is something different. And it still feels high elf, but obviously they didn't have hammers, they didn't have bulls, they didn't have bulls on their helmets, so it's different, but it still pays respect. And I think what Martin did here is pretty sweet. That will pop up soon to see that, like, we'll see. Really not that different.
Yeah, we actually have a little I was going to call it a PowerPoint. We have a little visual aid to kind of go through some of the art direction of this army a little bit. The hammers, I mean, so if I can go in a little bit different direction, I don't like the quote unquote racist elves and quote unquote racist dwarves trope. That is one of my least favorite tropes in all of fantasy. Is like, we somehow have to have like fantasy races have like certain like paradigms and stuff like that where they just like, ugh, you can't use hammers as elves, and like dwarves don't use swords. I don't like that. I don't, for whatever.
Thor and Oakenshield used a sword.
Yeah. But like, the point being is, like, I don't like that, like, sort of like racial weaponry thing, especially when it comes to, like, fantasy races 100% brand new. Like, what are you truly drawing from a completely made up? One of the worst takes I've ever heard is, like, talking about fantasy or to defend, like, Game of Thrones. They're like, "Oh, it's like it really was. That's why, we're okay with all the weird incest and rape stuff going on." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Like it really was in that totally real world of Westeros? Like that, like historically accurate to the real place of Westeros that we had? Like, it's the dumbest take." And in that same vein, totally fantasy race made up out of nowhere being historically accurate makes me want to just, like, I don't know, not feed my dog or something. Like, do something really mean or evil. No. Okay, we're not there yet. We're not there. No. I usually go to, like, Punch a Baby. I was looking for a different, like, an alternate to Punch a Baby. It didn't work. I tried it on a little bit.
No,
I don't like it.
You went too far.
I don't like it. Too far. No. I take that back. I love my dog. She's adorable. She's getting old, though.
I love that you have to keep adjusting your hat.
It's not okay. but this is gonna get us the extra views. No, so I actually like these guys. The hammer thing just doesn't even. It's not even a take to me. It's not even a. It doesn't move the needle in either direction. If you're like, "Oh, they use hammers," and whether you're on the negative or positive side, it doesn't move the needle for me. I don't care. It's such a lazy take. Especially, again, weapon swaps are pretty easy too. Like, grab some White Lion axes, have a blast. Martin, you want to finish this part of the discussion off?
Yeah. So it's like I think it's landed for people now that this is not the high elves of old. While there are remnants of the old tropes and like things that we hold nostalgic or familiar, there is also an inclusion of the new, and it's here to stay. And I think that's finally like it's sinking in for people that we're not just the cow stuff, because it's like we haven't seen the rest of the range. There's probably around, I would say, like 20 to or 15 to 20% left of like all of the kits we're gonna see. And if people are thinking that that last 15 to 20% is gonna save them from having to like look at the Alarith and the mountain sort of aspect of the elves, I think you're gonna set yourself up for even more disappointment there.
Right. Expectation being a real monster here, like having expectation.
Right.
Continue.
Yeah. No. I think that this is still like I think the Stone Guard probably summarized my sort of idea for the Lumineth overall. It's like we have this even like perfect union of the old, because there's aspects of Sword Masters and White Lions and Dragon Princes in here, but then it has themes of the new with all of like the symbolism and the different helmet designs. And I'm going to talk about this more in a little bit, how they changed the way elf armor looks. It's still elven, it still has similar shapes, but the texture composition and where that armor is on the miniature is changed a lot.
Well, you've got the classic sort of like robes and plate with a little bit of scale thrown in, right? Like it's
not necessarily, but I keep wanting to talk about that part.
Yeah, we'll get to that part a little bit later, but I love these guys. I love the high like neck guards on them too. That's one of the things that I truly enjoy about these sculpts is they have that. What's it, a bevel? I believe is the
it's called a
term?
it's called a gorget.
Like the gorget. Like I love that. I love that aspect on these models. Like the shoulders, they've even taken them and like kind of strung them out even further with those points off the like. I really dig it. So then the second sort of teaser we got, then the second reveal we got was actually the box that's coming in. Now, this is just... I'm jelly. This feels like the way they should do every army. Brice, you want to...
be nice.
Well, Martin, Brice, you've been lead hitting for most of these. Martin, why don't you take us through this? This is pretty much all we got for the second sort of week of previews. We got the box and we got a rule. Take us through the box.
Well, so first of all, we have functional faction dice. Like,
yes.
It was. I think almost like Games Workshop was like almost like they were self-aware.
I gotta take
I
gotta take the cheese head off.
I think once they got to the squig dice, I think everyone realized that they were self-aware about how silly like the faction dice had become.
Yeah. Okay, this is the thing I disagree with the most is functional faction dice. Like, own it. At the point where they were just going so freaking ridiculous with it, keep going. Just like that's like I'm like, you know what, I hate Dick Dice's that's a Thai Topher exclusive name for them. Their TM, I'm pretty sure I owe them like some money or something, some residuals for using it. But the Dick Dice I had come to truly like love. It was one of my favorite memes is seeing how bad the dice were for an army. And like, if you're going to buy the army, you're going to buy the dice. You won't even use them. You're just going to buy them anyway because you're like, I love the army. So they didn't need to be good or functional. But like, that's the thing I disagree with. You have an army that is the most polar they've ever been, and you didn't go the hardest on making the worst dice? They should have been made out of wind. You should have opened up the little box and there was nothing in there and been like, oh, wind dice. Like, so mad. Or like clear dice with no pip.
They did.
Just a symbol on two sides of it.
They did for Deepkin, like they did the clear dice, but then
those
like,
dice
semi translucent, like the waves instead
no.
of pips.
I'm saying make a literal plastic box and say there's wind inside of it, and then and that's the die you roll, and you've just got like the symbols on the 1 and the 6, just as bad as possible. That's what I want. Like I'm so upset. Them and Z.
No.
This is two in a row.
So may I say the most over the top? No one realizes, even more than Squig Dice, the most over the top dice Games Workshop ever made were the Nighthaunt faction dice, because they're the only dice Games Workshop made which glow in the dark. And the last thing you want to do is play Warhammer in the dark.
In the dark. All right, I way derailed you there with my hot take on dice,
Right.
but I'm
Right,
disappointed.
So it's
the box.
It's
box.
faction dice. Yeah, it's faction dice that are usable. There's even more cards. Like, I mean, elves were always infamous, like in Warhammer Fantasy days, of like all the spells they would get, and like just the cards they would get for like their faction lore were just more than everybody else, because it was what elves did. So it's interesting that we're getting another fat deck of cards, but there's probably even new stuff, that like new game mechanics and stuff that's going to be on there that we don't know yet. Because there's a reason that there's like 38 to 40 cards in that deck, and none of them are War Scroll cards. So there's stuff in there that's more than spells.
Well, yeah, I mean, people print those like fake magic cards and stuff all the time, like that have the artifacts and stuff, and I feel like that's probably what they are. They see that and they're like, well, we can just make them, which I'm super thankful for, because I don't ever print those, and it'd be nice to have them.
Yeah. Just like cards that say the artifact.
Yeah, like they have, or like the spells that you have and stuff like that. Like a lot of people that play here locally by me print like, and they have stacks of like 100 things from the book, and then they just hand them to the people they play, so they know what the rules are and stuff like that. So if that's what they are, I'm pretty happy.
I feel you, and that's probably true. But I think there's stuff in there that's like a new sort of game mechanic. Like,
No, I agree with you. The tokens thing. You have those little little gemstone looking dealies that come with the token card, and I pulled up the first image I found in Google for this, and so you can see the dice. They call them like a gemstone effect dice. They're essentially like a semi-translucent yellow dyed. Yeah. They've got an actual single pip for the 1 and then a symbol on the 6. Exactly how dice are supposed to be. So angry, so mad. Anyway, and then you get your like pack of cards. Like you said, there's a lot of cards in there, so we're probably getting some unique. Yeah.
Right.
But then when I look at the tokens, so the tokens just have essentially some sort of like runic aspect symbol on a handful of them. The aspect doesn't repeat itself, it's just that symbol. And then you have this.
You mean the little garnish pictures of the different helmets?
Yeah.
Maybe this is because I know, like, just because I ask too many questions about how the books are made. I don't believe those specifically have significance, but on the other side of those tokens are ability names, and I believe they're showing this side of the token like card stock to limit the amount of information that they're showing to people.
Why wouldn't they have just had a blank unique, or why wouldn't they have just like a blank consistent symbol then? That saves way more money on printing.
Because it's Games Workshop. All
right. I retract. I retract the question.
Right. They add extra embellishments because they can, and it's not. I don't think. Like, I mean,
it's one of those sharp edges. It's one of those sharp edges that makes their stuff unique and interesting.
Right.
The extra embellishment.
I mean, again, I could be wrong, but generally when they use that stuff, it's just for embellishment, and I don't think deciphering, because they put those in the battle tome just to fill page space. It's not just text. Like, all of the borders of the books is edged with art. They have stuff to break up paragraphs, which are just like little garnish textures, and like the helmet with like the patterns, and sometimes like just extra stuff that doesn't mean anything. It just makes the books look better, because they should.
There's nothing wrong with that, especially since books are kind of in the collector vein these days. You can get your rules for free on an app, or on the app, or on the website. The book is a collector's thing; it should look great. No, but these other tokens then have the single sigil of this like sort of gemstone.
Yeah,
I feel like there's going to be a resource. I feel like there's going to be some sort of resource or like stacking thing that goes on the guys. So we don't know anything about the rules except for one rule, and already people are arguing, so I can't wait to talk about that a little bit more. But this box, to kind of reset the discussion a little bit, this is, I'm jelly. This is how every launch box should be. It's got the tome in it with a unique, it's a special edition battle tome, comes with the box. So I'm guessing that just means a full art cover or something like that, right? Like no, just like what we saw with the cities.
It is, yeah. It's the same art, but without the title.
Right.
Like it's generally how Age of Sigmar ones.
Yeah,
work,
this is
but
the
I think
the EP cover, right? The full art.
Yeah.
Comes with the sort of core rules, the base. We get those with all of our other stuff. But like coming with the battle tome, the cards, the dice, the whole everything I order is 3 separate orders anyway. During a pre-order in one box. I'm so jealous. This is amazing. Brice, what do you have to say about the box? The box.
I love the box itself. Like, it's the white box with that super sweet picture of Teclis, where you can just cut that out and have that picture forever
Right.
as like a decent sized print that you could like hang on your wall or whatever you want to do. So that's cool. I like the box a lot once, but it's going to come out before, and I'm going to be super tempted to buy multiple of them, and it's going to just be a waste of money,
I'll take the dice off your hand so that I at like what you assume the MSRP to be of just the dice, so that I can make
dice,
a YouTube.
I can use multiple sets of the dice, but multiple books,
I tried.
not so much.
The most utilitarian thing. Dang it! All right, I tried.
But no, I mean, I think it's great. I'm sure it'll be that right there. That's super cool. I'm sure it'll be at a little bit of a discount too. I'd have to imagine, because they acknowledged that, I think, right, that it would be cheaper than buying it all individually.
I didn't see that.
What is it?
It's probably going to be around $200. Like,
you got Eltharion in it. Simple, possible celebrating any rival, spiritual successors. Contains fully customizable kits, etc., etc.
I mean, you figure that book alone is $80, right? That's what the collector books are, 80 or 90 or something like that. So, like, if the box is 200 and that book alone is 90, that's a hell of a deal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm for it, and plus you're gonna have the the whole FOMO thing goes into the marketing. People are gonna want to jump on and get that box early because it's gonna sell down. Gonna be calling a mini stomp. No, I like it. I like that they I think this is a really great direction for a start collecting. I can't imagine you not needing like either of these sort of 2 troop options. Like there's gonna be builds that leans into one or the other, but Spearmen are probably gonna be ubiquitous for the builds. Like Eltharion. Is Eltharion going to be the Grenadier, the Archregent, is that going to be like only available in this box? Or,
no.
You think they've done away with that completely? Yeah,
I mean, they're timed exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think you will be.
The only models that are like true exclusives are ones you can buy only at like Warhammer World or events.
Okay.
Everything else is eventually a timed exclusive unless they explicitly state otherwise.
Brice needs 100 of each to properly face down the legions of the dead.
90 of each.
90 of each.
Let's not get crazy. They're not going to be 40-man units.
All right, and so now okay, models, awesome box that I'm jealous of. So anyone criticizing this box, I can only assume it's because that their start collecting box wasn't this awesome. Because there's no objective reason to dislike this. It's great. It's awesome. Yeah. And then we get to the rule. So we get our first morsel of rules. Lightning reactions. During the combat phase, when it is your turn to pick a unit to fight, you can pick 2 eligible units instead of 1. If you do so, each of those units can fight one after the other in the order of your choice. I've got takes for days. Martin, what do you think? Do you like?
I mean, it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
I'm really because I want to crack the book, so like I definitely want to take like my game to the next level with this army. What part of that is being patient and taking like the rest of it in? Mm-hmm. It says to me that there's going to be a lot more abilities going forward about coordinated attacks, because I think an army is at its best in this game when you build to lean into your allegiance abilities
and your synergies.
And this allegiance ability tells me that you want to lean into like maxing out what is in combat where, and just being able to pair off. Like I want to either get 2 units on one big unit, or like I can reliably put something on a flank and like get rid of chaff, or like you can think about combos where this would be favorable, but I'm really hesitant to think about it without more context. I like it.
I think that's an important point. People rush often to shout "the sky is falling" whenever they read a single rule. Whenever they read a rule before the FAQs come out, that's another big kind of no-no. You can't. We can beat the dead horse over and over and over again that GW should release the rules better and yada yada yada. Fine, whatever. I'm not interested in that. They've done it this way for so long, where the rules come out and then it's about 2 weeks and then we get the FAQ, right? I almost feel that there's any real merit in talking about the rules prior to that FAQ. That being said, I really like the design space of this. I like what it's telling me because, well, Brice, I'll let you talk because I don't want to steal your thunder if you maybe are going to touch on some of the stuff I have to say. But what do you think about lightning reactions? Because you've said you don't care about the rules, like
and that's so truly this is where my hype level like takes a step down because I for every faction they preview, I hate this part of it. I absolutely hate it because, like Martin said, it's one of who knows how many rules,
right?
And it causes people to freak out and assume this and assume that and all this stuff, and it's like there's gonna be hundreds of other things to think about when you're thinking about this. So, I mean, just looking at this as a one thing, super cool. I love fast armies that can charge, and if I can take 2 units and charge and not have one at risk because I have to pick which one I want to fight with first, that's really, really cool, and I like it. But it, who knows? Maybe this is a battalion rule. Maybe
could be.
No one knows. It's like
could be
freaking out over this. I hate it. I can't stand it.
Yeah. It could be a 500-point battalion rule. Like the model,
a mega battalion rule that you only get in the narrative play game.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a very important way to sort of curtail your reaction. Is reminding yourself points are often a very good equalizer for how powerful rules. I mean, look at how much people are freaking out over Dark Prophecy with Slaves to Darkness. How many hot takes were made around Dark Prophecy, and it's like, who's COVID aside, really wasn't like stealing tournaments for like those like 3 months where we got to play with the rules, right? Like, sorry. So it's important to temper it, but I'm going to go a little bit different direction here because I like the headspace this is in. So you talked about like charging with 2 units. You know what that immediately reminds me of? The dragon.
Of Bastion?
No, Order of Draconis. Order Draconis. Order Draconis, where essentially like the whole army, you're taking the Quicksilver Potion, even the older versions of Age of Sigmar, to essentially like trigger 2 dragons charging you and fighting you. Like you have this spiritual successor rule in lightning reactions with that, which is. I think that's fucking awesome. It's saying, here is new elves. This is that trick that was sort of a patchwork familiarity we built with taking leftover stuff and like an accidental interaction and going, here's a deliberate interaction riffing on that. I think that's awesome. Furthermore, you get to like kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone with a rule like this. I hope this is the generic army rule, quite frankly. I hope it's not on a battalion. I hope this is their generic army rule, like Locus or whatever, Locus of Diversion, or
pretty sure it is.
I'm hoping that's So, but what it also does is it says elves are sneaky fast, and elves are tactical, which are 2 very flavorful, the best rules in the world. I don't care how powerful they are. The best rules in the world are the ones that play how it should feel, right? Like this feels elven to me. If they were going to pick one rule without any context whatsoever to preview for me, and I will gladly eat these words later. I'll write them down on a piece of paper and I'll eat it on live RantCast. I will eat that piece of paper. If they were going to choose one rule in that whole battle tome to say these are elves now, this is the one. Because for me, it brings it all home. The tactical synergy that Martin was talking about a little bit, like it shows that tactical mindedness of the elves. It shows 2 of them attacking at the same time, so you get the speed too, and then do it without always strikes first. I love it. Now that's not to say that they could potentially have an artifact or some other stuff that give them always strikes first in the battle tome, so we're back into those activation wars again. Don't mistake me. This is certainly a activation ability that's going to play with how you think about activating your army, but it's not doing anything brand spanking new. It's just doing it. It's doing the same thing everyone's always been familiar with twice. This is good design versus, always strikes last and the spreadsheet we end up with because there's always strikes last and always strikes first and when they activate. Yada. That whole spreadsheet. This is simple. It says when you pick a eligible unit to fight. Oh, it must be eligible. Then they fight. Like, it says what it does on the fucking rule. It's perfect for me. And the counterplay then becomes obvious. I'm going to try to deny you, my opponent, 2 meaningful activations. 1, if I get the charge and I outposition you, I still get that priority activation that I earned. I get to fight with my awesome unit first, and then you can activate 2 of your units, whatever. Right? So I'm going to theoretically prioritize targeting the correct units of yours to fight to make sure I take them out of the fight before you get your 2 activations. It's all on the rule. All straight up. Like, there's no secrets or there's nothing hiding it. Now, the nuance is going to come with how your other rules play with it. I look forward to that. But on its face value, I go, this is a good rule. I know how to play around it. I know what they're going to try to do to me. I like that a lot. I like that. I really do. I really enjoy this. And again, the fluff side of it, which I think isn't what's being talked about right now and everybody's outrage, it feels so elven to me for 3 very specific reasons I just gave you. Dragons, fast, tactical. Perfect. Wow, and Soren punctuating my words with 5 gift subs. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. But everything that you guys said is true. It's hard to make a mountain out of a molehill. We don't know points. We don't know what other rules are in the book. What if this is the only rule they get as a faction? They get nothing else. Do they feel overpowered at all? All that stuff is important to kind of quantify. Riffing off of what Martin said there, I would love to see them play around with, like, if you activate this unit first as part of your sequence, then this unit gets a buff, and then the buff is the inverse if you activate them in the reverse order for, like, a defensive versus an offensive sort of steroid. I would love to see some design in that space. I think that'd be cool too. But I don't have any expectations.
We'll find out.
Right. And 1,000 biddies besides with the Corgi animated GIF. And this is the Try Corgi episode, so thank you so much there, Soren. Do you guys have any more thoughts on this here? I've got to take a on-call shift call.
No.
Are we still live? Are we still live?
We're still live.
Okay.
This is where we entertain the crowd.
All right. So what are you working on in the elves recently, Brice?
Yeah, I got 37 swordmasters in front of me right now that I'm just trying to knock out.
I've been building some of what I like to call my temporary Lumineth.
Yeah.
Where I was painting that prince this week, and I'm building 5 to 6 archers and then a handful of spearmen, and then I'm going to do the color tests on them this week.
Nice.
And the goal is for Nova to bolster a lot of my army with, like, these old school models until I have, like, the time to paint. Like, because I also circumstances of current events willing, run my own GT in October, which means I have to paint all that scenery.
Yeah.
And as much as I want to, like, take Lumineth to tournaments and whatnot, like, painting that scenery does come first, making sure that my event is as fun and worthwhile for all of the attendees as possible. And so just painting all that scenery is going to eat up more time from this army.
Yeah.
And so, like, at least for early days, like, the troops, like the spearmen, the archers, the silver helms, like, on the right bases, and the bases are going to look as cinematic and visceral as can be in terms of, like, what I want for their effect. It's just going to be old school models pretending to be the new Lumineth for a little while, mixed in with my troops until I can replace them. And so that's what I'm going to work on right now. Because unfortunately, like, we don't know how long Games Workshop's going to be closed. And then when that box comes out, we're not quite sure how long it's going to be from when the start. Oh.
Nope.
He didn't mute himself.
Andrew, you're unmuted. I don't know how to tell him any other way.
Yeah. But anyway, like, so we don't know how long it's gonna be between the Lumineth starter box and when like the regular kits just start coming
exactly.
into circulation. So I feel like, and just to scratch that painting itch, and like I've been trying so many things. I've been trying this new Tamiya soil texture, which is like Games Workshop texture paints, but like a lot more realistic. Okay, he's back.
Nice. Way to like on the cuff like that. Way to go, guys. Thank you.
We're experts.
Way to bail me out. Y'all are familiar with RantCast. This is why we brought in veterans during an on-call shift week. Don't worry, it was a false alarm. Nobody is currently buried in a mine shaft, so I don't have to run out. On my own broadcast. Yeah, so rules being what they are. Wait, if you really want to have a hot take and be mad about it, wait until after the FAQ. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be that guy. Otherwise, like this, what I really want to kind of sort of bring home these like sort of these 2 weekends. Now, the second weekend didn't feel as like big as I had personally expected, but as I look at the two kind of like in a just from an Age of Sigmar standpoint, I don't really have enough depth in the other systems teas to tell you how big of a reveal it was overall. But like if I just go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
They said that all of what we're seeing right now was supposed to have been revealed at Adepticon. They had planned a 2-hour show.
Right.
And that just is all the more devastating that we did not get that. And because the factory and the warehouse and their headquarters is closed for everyone's safety during this crisis, they have devised a way to keep the hype generation going by stretching out this preview. Now the rest of the Warhammer community is feeling what Lumineth fans have been feeling since the Las Vegas Open. That's just how it's going to be.
Or what Ossiarch Bone Reaper players felt.
Not even close.
August to November.
No.
Not even close.
You didn't even know what your army was called.
Yeah. We've been out for 3 months now.
Right.
Fair enough.
And we're still like 3 months away.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh man, that's brutal. No, what I wanted to say though is, first off, big reveal is clearly a pun. Come on, Giants. Come on.
Yeah.
It's so obvious. But second of all, the point I was trying to make was actually like I wasn't personally hyped for Lumineth until these back-to-back weekends. I don't know. It's completely a subjective thing. You know, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for not feeling the hype, but I got a rule, which I want rules. I am the guy. Like, this army's not my army, so I don't. The sculpts will like move the needle in various directions. On like, I can't wait to play against that. But it takes a drastic. It's not a reveal that makes me want to play a different army. You know, like for me personally, it's I know I'm a death player and I've got a vacation home built with Beasts of Chaos. It took me months to commit to Beasts of Chaos as my quote-unquote second army, right? Like, it took me a year. It took me over a year to commit to Beasts of Chaos as a second army, because I'm like, everyone's got at least 2 armies. I should have a second army too. Which is my second army going to be? And I didn't know what to play for my second army for a very, very long time. It was the puzzle of Beasts of Chaos that enticed me in finally. We played that same thing... Oh, go ahead.
Just 2 final thoughts. It's like, 1, the time for rules discussion will come.
Oh yeah, can't wait.
But it is not yet.
Can't wait.
Yeah, and 2, all art is subjective. It's like I don't feel like people have to justify to anyone else what scratches their itch for them in this hobby. Mm-hmm. It is your hobby. Go for what you want.
Coach in there. Sup, legends. This show is a Wednesday treat. Welcome, Coach. I think there's a how do I put this? Like, there is a, start with the models. Really, like that's a big point for me. Is start with the models. So what you're saying there on the tail end there, start with the models. Like, the models are going to be the first gauge of whether you want to get it on an army to begin with. I loved Bestigors at the forefront, and then it's like, well, but are they good? Was really my riddle for Beasts of Chaos, right? And then I gradually solved that riddle. Did I want to play this, that? If I get rid of my Beasts of Chaos to build a second vacation home, because naturally I would have to fund that other vacation home from all my sweet death armies, I would be tempted to do Lumineth. I'm not gonna lie, like, because no army has like personally excited me in a way since. I was happy Daughters of Cain. It's been Gloomspite Gitz and Lumineth for me. The thing that stops me from ever playing Gloomspite Gitz is I don't want to play a Horde army of that size anymore. And I know I would have to, and I'm just like, yeah, no, not for me, man. And with this army, it's like there are so many elf bros out there that like they're good. They don't need me. And so it's like, but I do want to vicariously experience this army. And again, I'm the totally neutral, like the neutral party here. This army for me is one of those armies like I think, regardless of how I feel about elves, I want to see it on the table. And that's the thing I just keep coming back to is like I just want to see this army on the table. So I hope people embrace it and I hope people play it. And they're gonna. But like
they will.
Brice, man, like you live, an hour away from me. I'm like, as soon as you get these guys, road trip. Like I'm coming up. I'm like Bone Daddies versus Lumineth. Let's go.
Yeah.
COVID willing, right? But it's just this is an army that has a lot of the gears turning for me personally because I think it's a very interesting harmony between old world and new in a way that none of the armies have been so far. And to that end, we've got a nice little visual aid here that Martin actually put together here of this sort of like synthesis between the old world, the old world and the mortal realms, plus stretching your artistic wings and kind of,
So it's on screen now.
It is on screen now. It is on screen now.
Yeah. All right. So the first thing I wanted to do because one of the things I like to think at least I have some knowledge in is art history and like understanding why or like where a lot of this comes from in terms of the art that inspires the sculptors and the artists to create what we know as Warhammer. And again, this is I don't want to claim any definitive knowledge. It's more like I know what I'm looking at when you start to break down certain things, and it's I think easy to break down the change. And like a lot of this is comparing the old to the new. So on the left, like these are the two book covers. Let's just start there. You have the last High Elves book cover, which was painted by Paul Dayton, and then you have the oh God, I'm blanking on his name now. Hold on, one moment. I'm going to go to. Can people still see me? All right. Yeah. Hold on. Mark Holmes. There we go. So the new Battletome cover which we saw this week, was painted by Mark Holmes, and I just put next to him the other Battletomes he's painted. I think there was actually a few, including the Maggotkin of Nurgle book, the new Flesh Eater Courts book, and both the first and second Sylvaneth books. So Paul Dayton has worked for Games Workshop for many number of years. His art there's some of the most iconic portraits and paintings in Warhammer lore, which includes the old High Elves book cover. Mm-hmm. Was painted by him, and then you have another veteran artist who painted. So it's like this was not given to someone new. It's mm-hmm. not like they really just said, you know what, we're gonna just start from scratch, give this to all new people, and not do any sort of this stuff justice. This was not handled without care. Mm-hmm. And this is also a good thesis because we have the two elves right here. First thing to notice, like as we change from old to new, is that they took away a lot of the lamellar scale, like the famous like scale coats that a lot of the elves wear, mm-hmm. which and they kind of they made it smaller, they made it decorative, they took that metallic texture away, so we just have this plate armor and we have a lot more cloth. And just we keep a lot of the similar silhouettes with the tall helmets and the garnishes and detailing and like that. But Brice, you can chime in too if you see anything where it's like what's the same but also what's different.
The blue cape is like totally unfurling behind them both in a very similar sort of sprawl. Even like it's kind of. That stood out immediate to me. It's such a minor detail, but yeah, continue.
If you, I didn't include this picture, but it's available everywhere. On the cover of the Lumineth starter box is Paul Dayton's portrait of Teclis, and the cape for Teclis is almost the exact same shape to evoke that imagery of the high elves of the past.
That's
It's right. So
metal
like how
as
the cape
fuck.
look how the cape is flowing behind the high elf on the old codex is how the cape is flowing behind Teclis. Because he painted both things.
Yeah, 100% can confirm. I just, for those of you on pure audio, I just flipped over to the box cover for the Lumineth Realm-Lords.
Yeah, it's the same, right?
100% can confirm. It's kind of it's flipped, but it's the same sprawl. Right. It's got that same sort of horizontal line tilted, like amazing. And
Brice, before we go in like to the next slide, because it's like this is not supposed to be like. I just wanted to show people it's like.
My mind is blown right now. By the way, like it's, like it's absolutely like I just full on like Bill Nye the Science Guy, like double explosions. Wow,
gotcha.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Continue.
Before we move on, Brice, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, and I think with the helmet too, like obviously the bullhorns are different, but they still have that curvature of the phoenix wings that are on the helm. So like it feels similar, although it's pretty. I mean, it's obviously very different, but it still has that feel, and pays homage to it in a way.
A universal trope, and by trope like beyond Tolkien, just like straight European mythology of how elves are depicted, are always having this harmony with nature. Even at their most wicked and twisted, like the Dark Elves or the Daughters of Cain, they are still at one with some aspect of nature in that, like the serpent and the harpy and like these mythological, like violent creatures, these predators, they still take that aspect of nature into their own art, design, and costumes. And I don't think that really has changed. They just picked up a cow or a bull instead of more, I would say, traditionally high elven creatures.
Well,
yeah.
Well, like the proto, I'm like the proto animal thing of the mountain. I'm for it. One thing I'd love to point out is, well, two things I'd love to point out is one, the colors, and two, these gemstones. So these gemstones in the foreground of the new battle tome, those are very those are similar to the tokens in the box set. Yeah, I'm telling you, man,
it's Aether Quartz.
It's Aether Quartz.
This isn't an accident. Okay, so it's Aether Quartz.
Yeah,
I get not an elf player.
Can confirm, or GW did confirm it's Aether Quartz.
Yeah, so this Aether Quartz, they did this on purpose. You also have the sort of legionnaire style, like spearmen, elves, kind of in the backdrop, kind of fading into this mist. I mean, in both photos, we have a mountain, or in both covers, we have this mountain rising up behind, and then we have this mist-like, sort of like, scene. Right. In the new cover, you have this more scintillating colors, cornucopia mist thing going on, and then you have the more muted, sort of classic, like, Frazetta style, like, pseudo-oil painting.
Right. One of the things, and this is actually explained to me by an artist, because I have a friend of mine who's a professional artist for a living, and I showed him a lot of Paul Dayton's art, and he's telling me, it's like, this is what he's doing, and this is what it's called. Apparently it's called imitation impasto, where you create brushes in Photoshop to create the equivalent of an oil painting, where you're like having impasto is the buildup of paint. We don't want that on our miniatures because we work on acrylics generally and not oils. But it's if you ever look like at an old master oil painting, if you look at it real close, you'll see
was amazing at it.
Right, that physical buildup of paint. And Paul Dayton specifically has this style where he sketches, like if you look up any of his Warhammer art from 40K to Age of Sigmar or his personal stuff, it's he builds shapes and these silhouettes, particularly in the background, with just these brush strokes. Up in the cover, for those who remember old High Elf lore, he's this elf is supposed to be standing in front of Eagle Gate, which are one of the 5 gates which protect and separate outer Ulthuan from inner Ulthuan, and he just creates an illusion of it in the background just with those brushstrokes. And people have been latching onto at the bottom of the Teclis portrait, there is, and he just sketches in with these brushstrokes, other characters which are not supposed to be important, and he just fills the outsides of these characters with red herring. And there's a Dawn Rider because it's an elf, and like you can see a little bit of the horse head just barely in frame, but it has a new helmet on it, and people are thinking, "Oh my God, that's a new kit." It's generally not his style because he painted the Stormcast Eternals army book cover as well. And in that, he has a very King Arthur style with, like, there's the guy in the front, and then behind him on this hill, you have, like, 4 or 5 guys who are like his posse, waiting for the hero to be done posing for the camera before they go back to killing bad guys. And one of those guys is there's a Stormcast on foot with a spear. And there is no war scroll where there's a Stormcast on foot with a spear. And people are like, what is that? It's just a red herring he likes to put in his art to make it unique.
At some point, like, you could see Games Workshop making a model for it, but the artist intent was not... That's the art inspiring them, and not the other way around. Right. Yeah, one thing I want to go back to, though, is with the color usage, is you do have that Frazetta, that Impasto, like, sort of classic fantasy feel. And with the newer cover... I feel like it's gotten brighter and more that fantasy's fantasy, that term that totally stolen from Frank of Chat Gang, and now made famous by Haywo on his recent army video series.
The detail is more substantive. I just wanted to use both covers. Like, I know we've broken down like the art style is like similar. I just wanted to show like how similar the costumes are from old and new.
I just feel like this is not on accident though. This is a very deliberate. Like, I don't think the artist in the new cover is like totally ripping off the other one. I think there's a deliberate intent to like capture an essence though, and I think it succeeds for me. Like, I'm looking at the capes, I'm looking at this sort of vertical composition, I'm looking at that sort of mountain plus mist, I'm looking at the standing on the greenery in the foreground. All that's missing is like corpses in the front and arrows, sticking up. But then you've got that Aether Quartz instead. Like, this is, I like it. Again, I'm not here to sell anybody that if you Lumineth aren't hitting home for you, I'm not here to sell you that they should, but I am here to say that Games Workshop didn't make them on accident. Like this, there was a deliberate attempt to make something great.
Right.
Continue, Martin.
And not so different. Like, if we go to the next slide shortly, I will break down where it's like, because I've seen the argument online, and where it's like, these are not my elves. Mm-hmm. It's like, but they might just be your elves if you look closely enough.
Bryce,
because there was some.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
Bryce, anything to add to the covers before we move on to the next slide?
No, I think that we've pretty much nailed it here.
And then the Aether Quartz thing. Man, see, like my brain just wants to talk about rules, like, and speculate because my brain is thinking.
There's no room for rules here. That's episode 4.
I'm sorry, episode 4 of the Aelfisode. Aelfisode 4 we'll talk about rules. Aelfisode 4 we'll talk about. I'm sorry. All right, next slide.
All right. So right here are I took like each of the units we've seen so far. Not including the characters, because the characters we can talk about at a later date, especially when we know what they do. And like the lore. Huh?
On screen, for those of you in pure audio, we've got the spearmen and the archers right now. Yeah. So spearmen on the top, archers on the bottom. Continue, Martin.
So it's like it was pretty clear, I think, from the outset that what we were looking at was the spiritual successor to these main troops, which for the wardens are the spearmen. The sentinels are the archers, but I think there's an overarching theme. I'm not going to read the bullet points, like, because people can see the bullet points. Like, if you want to just go,
I'm going to go ahead and read them real quick.
Yeah.
So for the spearmen, it says conical helm switched for rounded helm crowned by fan-shaped plumage. So I think that honestly the plumage did a really good. I won't go into the thoughts. Lamellar male skirt removed. Retained texture as decorative garnish over shoulders and groin.
Yeah,
and then you got
little triangle patches of it. Yeah.
And then my favorite detail is actually this final bullet point, which is the shoulder plates added. So like this is a detail I love because for me, like, huge shoulder plates that make no sense is like a super stylistic I mean, this is Final Fantasy VII right here. Like, why is Cloud wearing the one huge shoulder pad? It doesn't make sense. It's just awesome. You know, like, it's just, for me, it's that fantasy's fantasy. So I like that detail. And then for the archers, we have chest armor, asymmetrical plates on right shoulder and along left leg. And then new bow design. This is a very Age of Sigmar bow design for me. A triple bow, come on. That's cool. It just gets three.
Like,
What's better than ab bow? 3 bows.
It is not historical in the slightest. It is pure fantasy.
Yeah, this is pure fantasy. I think it's awesome. The triple bows, the tri bow, well, because they're 3 times as good as you. That's a haughty elf thing. It's, and then metal helmet added, topped by feather decoration, which is, of course, they had these like circlets with the feather coming out of it before, as opposed to like a full-on helmet. So yeah, those are the bullet points. You want to take us back through these spearmen then?
Yeah. Yeah. So like there's a thing where it's like they wanted there to be less metal on the Lumineth like as a whole, because it's like as someone, and Brice could probably like concur, as just paint, there's a lot of metal on elves, and they wanted to make sure that there was less. I personally think that they were a little fed up with.
Is that a great sorter? Is that a great sorter? Yeah, right on.
Yeah, he's all metal.
Yeah, Swordmaster. Yeah,
just all metal.
And yeah,
Swordmaster.
Where are the Swordmasters on the next slide?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but like if it's just, you have all of the plate armor, and then you have the scale mail, especially like on the newer guys like the Swordmasters, which were a 2010 kit, and the Phoenix Guard. You have like the metal sleeves, and then you have this metal skirt, and you have a little bit of cloth like at the ankles, and then the feet. And so it's like elves were pretty like heavily armored in terms of their texture composition for how glass cannony they were. And I think at the beginning of Age of Sigmar, this is getting into just pure speculation, but I think it makes sense to me. Is that a lot of the Age of Sigmar, like the first year sort of factions, which were like Stormcast and Khorne, just dominated just the public eye for everything that came out new for Age of Sigmar. And like if you go back and look, it was plate, you had leather, and then you maybe had a little bit of skin, and that was generally it for both factions. And I think there was a decision made to not have that be so prevalent with the elves, because they retain so much of their silhouette. If you look at the spearmen in particular, you still have the long skirts as like the lower half of their torso, but they've taken all of like the metal and just condensed it. They gave them shoulder armor. The helmets, while they're not as pointy, like they're thicker and more reinforced. The shields have more detailing on them, including like the addition of scales at the bottom of the shield.
Oh, that's
which
beautiful.
Is just I think that's just like we're filling space. We didn't want it to be a solid like just one color or one texture.
Well,
and then with the elves, it's like, first of all, I don't think I'm gonna make anyone angry here. The High Elf Archer kit is one of the ugliest games.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, and so they were due. They were due for an update. I don't think you really could have gone wrong with how you update archers, but they actually gave them armor. But they didn't give them scale armor. They gave them like these pieces of plate armor with all of that elaborate trim. And
or it could be hard leather. It could be like an old school hard leather armor too, though, like hardened leather plates, where they'd actually.
But everything that they paint that pearly white is steel.
Oh, fair enough.
And if you notice, like they do with the scale, the triangular scale mail, instead of it being these long skirt sheets, there's a triangle at the groin and at the shoulders, and I believe every elf troop has that in one way or another in this army.
Yeah.
So it's less metal to paint, which is cool. You're going to be painting either more plate armor or more like cloth. You're not going to just be painting all of those little scales, because to paint it right and highlight those right, it's a bitch.
Well, I'm out of my hobby depth here. With you two, you're two great hobby heroes in our community and abroad. This feels like a really good change from like a heavy metal army to a range of textures and materials for like the person who truly wants to like dive deep on painting. I think that's a really cool hobby direction, first of all. And second of all, we go on the fluff flavor, the lore side of it. one of those rules that exists in like RPGs and stuff is if you wear heavy armor, you're not magical or whatever. Like heavy armor tends to interfere with casting spells and so on and so forth.
That was actually a rule in old Warhammer. Mages couldn't take magic armor unless they were like a chaos wizard.
Right. And so like this even nods to that like like their newer sort of envisionment with like being one with nature a little bit more again. Like less metals and more like cloth and more free like that lends itself to like the whole wind vibe and the nature vibe and stuff like that. So you have like a sort of a 1-2 punch here of the model's aesthetic reinforcing the lore, but then also just like general gameplay or general like hobby wise making it more engaging and fun to paint these guys. I think that's really cool. Brice, you gotta be holding on to a couple of comments at this point, man.
Oh, I'm so thankful to not have to paint models that are half-scale male ever again in my life after this comes out. I love painting cloth, so I'm thankful there's a lot of cloth. And I think that all the changes are, obviously, we've talked about them, and they are a lot different, but look at that spearman compared to the spearman on the furthest left in that rank of spearmen.
Mm-hmm.
They don't
and
look
tell
that
me
different,
those
do they?
tell me those models don't look alike. Like that, you could put that unit. Obviously, it's going to be way taller, but if you put that model in that unit, you wouldn't even notice it.
Well, the posture, the posture is like there was a very deliberate attempt to pull that visualization in. Like they still have the helmet height, but they substituted out like the classic conehead. And I'm sorry, it looks like the coneheads from the '90s movie. This like sort of like purely silly. Like they shifted out this like purely silly thing to something. It's still got like a weird like sort of swoop back sort of bucket vibe to like the core helmet, but then for that extra height, instead of like just having an artificial cone, they're like, oh yeah, plumage, headgear, we have like that's cool. It's awesome. It gives you something extra to paint, to hobby, but it also still keeps that sort of visual height that you want to see from your elves. You want those like quote unquote pointy elves, and you've got this plumage like, and I don't know, it's cool. And like there is a range of like plumes across the models too, which I think also helps give you that visual interest you want when you're looking at a unit of 10 or 20 of these guys. Plus the poses the poses are way more dynamic.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Brice, before we move on to the next one?
No, you guys are just crushing it. I'm just sitting here shaking my head. So.
The next one I could talk about all day, because this is like my favorite unit. This is probably my favorite kit that Games Workshop's ever produced.
Am I going to the next slide, or am I about to make fun of the archers?
You can make fun of the archers all you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
you won me over, by the way.
Yeah.
You won me over, by the way. You did. I look at these old archers and I'm just like, I'm throwing up a little bit in my mouth as I look at them. But the new archers are the only model that I don't like because I hate their helmets.
They look Dr. Seuss. I get it.
Dr. Seuss. Like Cindy Lou Who. Immediately. I'm just like, what the hell?
I totally get it. I totally get it.
Like, I love the bull helmet, by the way. I'll go on record. I think the bull helmet, it might be oversized and silly. Love it. Love it. These archer helms, man, I'm not about them. But I get it, though. Like, the arrow, they're actually almost like kind of replicating the plume on the end of the arrow. It's not called the plume. Fletching on the end of an arrow, right?
Fletching with an E.
Fletching, the fletching on the end of an arrow, like they're kind of like paying a nod to that. I get what they're doing here. I just don't like it. No, sir. All right. Done memeing on the archers.
I've been holding on to it for like weeks, making fun of their Cindy Lou Who helmets.
Right. If you really want to talk about how ridiculous the bow is, just someone tag Shadiversity on Twitter and he'll yell at it.
I love the bow. I love it. I'm like didn't even like 3 strings wouldn't work at all. Like my brain didn't even go there.
No, well it's 3 strings on
top.
First of all,
it's 3 strings on top, not 3 strings. Yeah.
That's right.
That connect to one. So yeah.
It's like what
pure
is
physics.
This? I'm just glad we have bowstrings at all.
Exactly.
For decades, people had to be used to like. Huh?
Oh yeah, there's no bowstrings on the. I didn't even notice on the models to the side of them.
Almost all bows have no strings.
Right, it's like we're talking only within the past year has Games Workshop been able to create technology where they can add when they
Oh.
add the bow.
Oh, so this is just Games Workshop flexing on people. They're just going
Yeah,
like, we can add 4
Not only can we add strings, we can put 4 on one bow.
on one bow.
Yeah. Oh,
Asymmetrically.
what a flex. Okay, never mind. The bows are twice as good as I thought they were before because math with the helmets taking away, but then the bows. Yeah. All right. All right. So your favorite. This is your favorite sculpt.
Brice, this was the first sort of like point of contention. As I was like, they're just horses, right? That was my I wish that they were like lions or something that they were riding before. So this was the first point of contention I had for like the Lumineth teasers. Not that I'm like, I'm the worst. They have just horses. I will never buy this art. It wasn't that. It was just like, weird that they went with just horses. Maybe y'all can make me a believer why they went with just horses right now.
No, I just think like the composition, the poses, just like how they look. Like I'm just sold on just how they're presented. I'm not gonna try and sell you on the horse thing. Like,
just the horses? All right.
Well, just as before we get into the bullet points, it's like I get it. We were used to Stormcast getting the whole zoo and everything that from Godzilla ponies to like the Jurassic Park Frankenstein of bird lizard horses. like chocobos almost feel low fantasy compared to this stuff.
It's great.
And then we got like the Pegasus goat for the leader on the wizard no one takes. And it's so we're used to all of that. And then the only like we get Chaos Knights, it's like, well, we're trying to recreate Chaos Knights. This is supposed to be like our own version of the posse of Thulsa Doom from Conan the Barbarian. No one's really saying, well, why are they still on horses? Because it's like, well, this is how Chaos Knights look. This is how they've always looked. And then all of a sudden we get just elves on horses. Not horses with 6 eyes. Not horses with six legs.
Little Odin riff. Right. Like, come on.
Right. The only thing they do differently is that they braid the tail hair to just change how the silhouette reads. That's it. Yeah. Right. I forgot to add that as a point, but I ran out of room on the page anyway.
Right.
Anyway, that was my
So getting into the bullet points, they braid the tail hair.
Oh, I did put that in there?
No, I said it right now to cover for you.
Okay.
They would have never known, man. They would have never known. You just ruined it. So yeah, braid the tail hair, lamellar, skirt removed, non-metallic elements of costume replaced with metals. Can you expand on that one real quick? What do you mean by the greaves and stuff?
Like some of the greaves and silver helms. Silver helms are also as notoriously like goofy because they're from that era of like when the archers were doing stuff. Mm-hmm. Like their gloves are like the size of like a bucket. And it's like leather should be this pillowy. Come on. Mm-hmm. And like you can just tell like certain textures are just like blocked in. Like if you look at the barding on the horse, it's just like
the
square.
scale is terrible. Yeah.
Right. It's like this should not be a solid mass here.
Yeah.
And so they just updated it. Like Total War did that as well. If you look up the concept art. For the High Elf units for Total War, when they were allowed to take these ancient 28mm miniatures and then do a full art of them, they do a lot more justice to the existing textures. But GW was like kind of having none of that. And so there's this whole Eldar style motif adding to like taking the existing elf costume and just slimming it down and making it not like a jumpsuit, but very much like this contained sort of
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Right, like if you see the skirts like on the old silver helms, they're gone. It is just that is a dude, almost like a jockey. Like they call
the same thing I was thinking. Yeah, like a real jockey quality to him with like the the pants and stuff like that.
Right. So you're not the comparisons on the horses are I'm doing all sorts of medieval words tonight, which is that sort of thing. Like if you think of Britannia, where they have all of the cloth on the horses to cover in regalia, instead of it being that sort of high elf thing where it's like more skirts, they make it again that triangular shape to add to the symmetry and like a zenith everything. Like there's a lot of triangles in this army.
And if you've watched Andrew Yell's video on my channel, though it is his video. That
was the inspiration for me to make this PowerPoint.
Yeah, he was talking about the triangles an awful lot there, with like just sort of training your eye, like artistically speaking. This wasn't even just Age of Sigmar. This was his art degree talking is looking for the triangles in art and stuff like that. So there are a lot of triangles going on here. Yeah, you're very right. You're very on point with that.
Yeah. But anyway, keep going on the bullet.
Yeah, so then we got unit champion helmets retained similar silhouette. Other troops added stylized plumage,
which helps break up that gives you that visual interest. We want to see visual when we have like 10, 15, 20 guys on the table in like the same unit. You still want those points of visual interest while you're looking at it to help with the notion that there's a battle going on.
Yeah.
Right. Horse armor moves to medium plate, lamellar scale reduced to decorative garnish, and then lances slimmed akin to spears. So there's actually a weird movement towards realism with some of this stuff. Like if I'm looking at the plates on the horses here versus before, like you mentioned, the kind of like block shape, they have a bunch of like these sort of reticulated plates, you know, like these layers of plates that would have movement. But I had picked up on it on accident, and when you were starting to get to the point about them looking like jockeys on these, they really do have this like, you know, their boots are very much those like sort of clad, sleek boot, and then they happen to have
contained.
Yeah, like the riders and stuff like that. The pants are the slacks are very contained. The armor underneath, like these are elves that know what their job is. They're there to go fast and murder with spears, and these models say that. I wish they were lions instead, but like, yeah.
The sprues will tell all.
Yeah.
If you see the sprue and say, you know what, I can cut this guy out from the horse, or he's not. He is like separate. You can probably put them on different steeds. Up to you. Yeah. I'm sure someone's gonna do something crazy.
Yeah. These saddles are outrageous, by the way.
Yeah, but you're gonna get that in Warhammer. And like the Dragon Princess, the old Dragon Princess of Calidor, their saddles were crazy too.
Like they're like full on, like this guy's got a back spur, and not in the terms of like the pain and stuff. Like he has like a saddle that comes up, it cups all the way up to his shoulder blades and beyond, and then it's got a spur on it. I don't know why, but I'm for it. Like that's that Age of Sigmar. Like I just like if he gets like desaddled, like or something disintegrates his horse. So like I play a Death Army. Like I probably got some sort of like kill all the living, you know. So like I kill the living matter, which is the horse, and then you've broken your spear because you already stabbed somebody. So now you got to pick up the saddle and kill them with it, and the saddle is an axe. I'm for it.
They moved a lot of the cloth, and like if you notice, all of the saddles generally have like some sort of moving like cloth or pennant on the back of it, because they reduced the amount of visual movement the knights themselves have. It's this very Eldar self-contained sort of thing. Like if for those familiar with Eldar, generally their armor is very like close to the body. I'm trying to think of the word where it's like form-fitted. There's not a lot of until you get to like the HQs and the wizards. It's very much just like a bodysuit. And
Soren, you bring up a point here that I wasn't even going to talk about, but I disagree wholeheartedly. He says the main issue I have with modern AOS is the inability to fit into combat, which is why we skirmish and we kind of loosely pile in. The spears look like they will be an absolute bitch to pile in and fight with. I disagree. Every one of these spears is tilted up or at a diagonal, with the exception of one.
He might be talking about the regular spearmen.
Oh, the regular spearmen, yeah, they'd be a nightmare. But like, look at these. These are all raised up and at a diagonal. These are going to be a dream to pile in with the exception of Homeboy here in the way background, who's got a completely sort of like parallel to the ground spear.
Yeah, because he's ready to impale some beast.
But I want that like visual, sort of like, I want each one of these models to be in a different like sort of snapshot of their ride into combat.
Yeah.
And I think they do that really well, which is where we get to the straight leg. We get to the straight leg.
It's fine. I really didn't pick up on that as weird. I think it's just because this is all we have to look at. When you look at them like from the isometric view, when you're looking at someone's toy soldiers on the table, it's not really going to stand out that much.
Yeah. Also, even here, the straight leg soldier, by the way, is the one with the sword in the foreground. You can see it on the camera.
Unit champion.
Yeah, the unit champion is the one that's got the straight leg. That straight leg is actually on the interior of the model. It's you're never gonna really from this angle. The body.
I don't know why that bothers people.
It looks
it's ridiculous.
Brice, we had to kind of go over this once, I think on the previous Aelfisode, but he cut out audio. Why? No, he's fine.
Oh, he's not there.
He's talking.
Yeah, he's talking. I think he might have hit a button.
He had to have hit a button. No, we can't hear you, man.
Oh no. He just figured out that we can't hear him.
It's all right. This is great. This is great. This is great radio. This is great TV.
Got it. Yeah. But anyway, we just lost him.
I'm back.
There he is. Hey, I can hear you. Yeah. So the straight leg. Just say exactly what you just said then, except perfectly.
So the straight leg is fine. I don't care about the straight leg at all. But what I really like about this unit compared to the silver helms is these look like they're running into war, whereas the silver helms look like they're marching in a parade. And like that, like they're just blocky and weird. All of them, every single detail in these models is made to look like it's running forward. It's not marching. It's not standing still. They're all charging into combat. And I think, they've talked about how fast they are and how quick they are to strike. They're selling that in the models, and I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Something that kept coming to mind for me, and I think a lot of what my current army is like influenced by, was the elves in Lord of the Rings films, including the Hobbit. And in the Hobbit movie, like, we're introduced to Rivendell by Elrond and his hunting party of knights with these very thin spears. It's like the spears, they're not lances anymore, and emphasize on them being medium cavalry, because they've said that like repeatedly in like the articles. These are medium cavalry. These are not light cavalry. These are not heavy cavalry. They are medium cavalry. And so their lances are like slim. They're more like hunting spears. And it's very similar looking, and all of the poses and just them charging, especially in this picture I pulled from Warhammer Community. It's like this is like the elves hunting the orc pack just outside of Rivendell. And if you watch that sequence, like, you can go find it on YouTube, where they charge over this hill and they just destroy all of these orcs. It's very similar to this picture, in my opinion. And that's why I was just like, I fell in love with this unit immediately.
And I bet if you pause that, at certain points, the horse's legs are straight. just another thing to say.
Yeah, way to bring it home. No, I like the rider postures in particular stand out for me. They're very much they're very much riding to go to fight. Like,
and we've talked about helmets, and everyone, I absolutely love these
helmets. Best helmets.
I will say the only thing that's kind of weird for me, and this is just me being really weird, a lot of them have that swirl, so it goes up at a point, and then it goes over, and then it swirls again, and it looks like the mountain in the Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, the movie poster.
Oh.
You know, the tip of the mountain tips in a swirl?
Yeah, you just made that even cooler for me. You thought you said this was weird. I'm like, if I didn't think they're already the coolest, so I would say that same thing you said, except with a different, like, excitement level. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're helmets, and then they spin like the Tim Burton, and then I would be excited about it.
Yeah, it's a Tim Burton Easter egg on the Cav unit.
So what I already thought was the best helmets of the models we've seen just got even more the best. They just moved across the checkerboard of looking sweet and said "King me" with a Tim Burton reference.
There you go.
Love it.
But yeah, that was all the thoughts I had. Where it's like these are the silver helms of the future.
So
they look great.
I don't have bullet points, but you have both the dragon blades. I think
Yeah.
this is a white lion, and then a sword master of Heth or whatever.
Yeah, well, because it's like the I needed to put more pictures on here than just like have bullet points. It's like, so we're gonna talk about, and this is where Brice is gonna be able to chime in a little more because I know he loves sword masters. So I put in here, it's like, so here's the stone guard. Here's the thing where it's like everyone is on board, everyone's on board, everyone's on board, and then we start to see the cow stuff.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? And so my argument is everything that we're seeing right now in the Stone Guard has existed in some way, shape, or form before in Elves.
I love this pure propaganda we're about to get. Because the Stone Guard are
propaganda.
By far my favorite model in the range. Helmet takes aside, I love these guys. And I'm just like looking at these like side by sides, and I'm going like galaxy brain right now.
Yeah.
Because even like the posture, you're looking at how he's like kind of the axe from.
He looks like a white lion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like this is a white lion about to hit you. It's just like he's got slightly different adjustment on the grip from the white lion because he's wielding a hammer instead of an axe, so he's going to come in with more of a swing than a chop. But it's like,
and he has just a cloth cape instead of a lion pelt.
Yeah, but it's still even curling toward us in that like same,
right.
Like you could, I mean, even the shoulder, like the lion pauldron is just a droopy stone guard shoulder. Like if you take that tip and bend it down, you've got the white lion's shoulder pad. Obviously, you've got the lion iconography, but it's the silhouette. If you bend the white lion up, it's the same silhouette off that shoulder pad.
You can also tell how far the sculpting technology has come in 10 years because there's
Yeah.
a 10-year-old kit next to the Stone Guard.
And
I put the dragon.
I gotta say, I still think white lions look sick as fuck. By the way, I still think they look.
Oh yeah, they look great. I just wanted to add, I still think the Dragon Prince helmets are more ridiculous because if for anyone who's ever built a Dragon Prince kit with those helmets, some of them, depending on the combination of head and chest armor you use, Dragon Princes cannot turn their head. Because of you see how the detail goes all the way down with the dragon wings and then out. Because of how high some of their shoulder decorations go, a Dragon Prince cannot turn his head. And I think that's a bigger problem than the stuff we have here. But anyway, Brice, did you have anything you wanted to add about what was then and now in terms of the kit?
Yeah, I see the white lions for sure. I don't see Swordmaster, aside from the shape, I guess you could say. But I think that as someone who you said has loved the Swordmasters, and I feel like that's where the argument comes is, oh, we don't have anything like a Swordmaster, but I'm fine with not having it because we still have Swordmasters.
Right. I do understand the argument, and I agree with you. It's way more White Lion than Swordmaster, but I want to bring up mostly the armor design.
I want someone to edit in when you said it's more like a White Lion than a Swordmaster. I want someone to edit in my video just like someone shred the guitar because the White Lion and then there's no guitar riff for a Swordmaster. But continue.
Yeah. So if you look, it has a very similar, you have the long skirt. So it's this. The Gorget is completely new, where we have that sort of just Transformers or Galador sort of heavy armor, where we're just going to completely surround. Like Mass Effect, basically, where we're just going to surround the knight's head with metal. And it's going to slope down and then come up again. So it's this astronaut sort of spacesuit of armor around the chest. And then you have these big angular shoulder pads, which are like the Swordmaster sort of. They curve like hills. It's it starts up and then down and then comes up to a point again. You have the triangular lamellar scale. You have the tasses, the hip guards. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's Tasset, Tasset or Tassets. But then you don't have any scale armor. It's just, it goes down to a skirt. They do have some armor underneath because they have the little metal booties. On some of the units, they're
you wonder you wonder if the underneath armor is the same style as the riders on the horses.
Unfortunately, we'll never find out,
Yeah.
because on the cover where you see the unit champion for the Stone Guard in full tilt, ready to punch some face, there's a cloth under, like there's 2 layers of cloth.
Yeah.
And there will never be a pose which shows that. And
there could be
so
art
it's like,
though, maybe in the book.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is true. And then you have like that nice, with a lot of the mountain stuff, you have that sort of the Chinese sort of it looks like a cloud sort of sketched into.
Oh yeah, the Monkey King thing. Where like the Monkey King's like got the classic sort of like armor where it's got the shoulder pads out to the side, and he's got the sort of like points off the, not quite a skirt, but like right off the hips.
But also the
Goku. It's the Goku or not the Goku. The Saiyan armor.
Yeah.
The Saiyan armor thing, right? Like that's
which is based on like
the classic Monkey King.
Right.
Yeah. Like. Yeah. Legend, myth.
And also like the Chinese pottery sort of engraved the flowing clouds
and stuff.
You can see it on the cow armor when we're going to get to the Titan in the next slide. But I like the pose to me, like the overall silhouette reads a fusion of the Swordmaster and the White Lion to me, but more White Lion than Swordmaster.
Well,
I just think that it's a lot of old mixed with new.
Yeah.
I want to just, if I can, I don't mean to take us on a tangent too much. I just want to say, like,
you don't mean to take us on a tangent on RantCast? Disgusting. Continue. Tangent.
The whole thing for people who want to design, it doesn't matter if it's Warhammer or it's just like fantasy in general with any sort of vaguely historical or naturalistic like influence, because we just love Europe when we write fantasy. Mm-hmm. Is you never want to have a 1-for-1 sort of inspiration, like analog for what inspires you. Like even when they were designing the creatures for Lord of the Rings, you don't want to say it's like, well, the elves are Greek, or there's this clearly Celtic inspiration for the dwarven runes, the armor in Taglio, the language and whatnot. It's you want there to be a blend of what's familiar with your own ideas into something that feels believable to the audience, which takes it like out of the into the uncanny valley or out. I forget which one.
Out of the uncanny valley, because you don't want the uncanny valley. You don't want the sensation when you're staring at it.
Takes it out of the uncanny valley and just sells you as this living, breathing thing from this world you've created. And so we can pinpoint or like just dissect certain artistic influences from both the old and the new elves. Mm-hmm. And when people say it's like, well, these aren't my elves, or it's like there's hints throughout this army of what there used to be, and they've added new. You can say it's like, well, they've added from. I would say that there's clear influences of India and Mongolia, on top of like the general Greco-Roman inspiration that a lot of Order factions tend to have. Like if you look at Deepkin, Stormcast, Daughters of Cain, a little bit of Fire Slayers, it's like there's just Order in general. I think because this is just what Games Workshop, the artists, like to do, is borrow from that mythic Greco-Roman style storytelling for Age of Sigmar.
I before I had Frank's Fantasy's Fantasy to draw, and I used to compare Age of Sigmar to Hercules' Legendary Journeys with Kevin Sorbo. Like it had a very this is Greek mythology. Age of Sigmar. It's like the gods still walk around doing stuff and messing with the lives of mortals. But that inspirational line I think is there.
So it's like I think it's always important to say to like as a goal, if you're a fantasy artist, like if you're building this world, like because I like say someone from Games Workshop watching this, it's like it's their job to build this world, to sell it to your audience. It's like it has to feel its own. It has to feel like we don't want things to be derivative of any one thing anymore, or you never want that to begin with.
Right.
So I think that they did a good job in making one of the most Tolkien things a little bit more, in some ways a lot more, what they want to do with it rather than just designing in these safe spaces.
Well, Vince had a really great point about elves on one of his recent shows, where he was talking about like sort of like the quote unquote historical folklore threads of things that we read as traditionally fantasy in our models and stuff like right now. The elf folklore, taking it all the way back to its roots, doesn't read like the elf fan likes. Elves as elf fans like, it's very much the Tolkien elf. Making them tall,
not just that.
light,
Not just that. The PG people are not aware, I think, of how much Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films influenced how popular culture depicts fantasy worlds. Like, I mean, like, and Vince has also talked about how it's like, it's also who wrote the Chronicles of Shannara.
Oh, not Brooke. Is it Brooke? No.
Terry Brooks.
Terry Brooks, yeah.
Terry Brooks. Yeah, no, it's like, yes, Terry Brooks, C.S. Lewis. There's other people other than Tolkien which have impacted the literature and how we write fantasy. Mm-hmm. But I think that if the films, the Lord of the Rings films, influence a lot of how we depict Western medieval style fantasy in popular culture. And it will always be that way. It's like, these are once in a lifetime sort of movies. It's like, elves look like they do in the Lord of the Rings movies now because of that, and dwarves and orcs and all sorts of other magical creatures look how they depict it. Like, that's like the baseline. And I think we need anyone who's trying to make their own stuff has to walk away from that baseline a little bit. And I think this is that. Like the cow stuff.
The other one of the things I remember saying to my friends at the time when the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out, I was in high school, I believe, and I based an entire Palladium Fantasy RPG game off of it. By the way, it was called the Five Fates because I had 5 player characters in it, and I totally stole from the Lord of the Rings movies as well. Not the books so much, because any reader would know that there's some serious differences, but like, I observed at the time, in a way that I didn't have a language for yet until very recently, that like we had a paradigm shift in pop culture. Like, fantasy was always the nerd thing up until that point. The Lord of the Rings movies, not the books, because nerds have been reading those books for decades. It was those movies that brought that into the mainstream, and they kind of MCU'd on fantasy before the MCU'd on comics, right? Like, that was like a necessary step in like making this sort of like nerd pop culture. I mean, you get Harry Potter kind of paralleling that on a little bit of a delay between Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings movies. Like, boom, fantasy's pop culture now. You know, like, Conan didn't make it pop culture as much as we love the old Conan movie, specifically The Barbarian, right? Like, because there's 2. But like there was a paradigm shift too, and I think that like it's important to understand like how popular culture elves and dwarves are now, like, and how hard it is, truly difficult it is to remix that in a way that people both accept but is also different. Because if you just want, vampires have a similar problem, and this is the point I come back to with like what Vince was making. Is like, vampire is a lot broader stroker though, a lot broader stroke than elf.
Well,
because elf has like kind of like the singular definition, whereas like vampire, you can keep taking it back and distilling it out to, as long as something's stealing something's essence. Oh, go on.
Well, yeah, like a lot of different ancient cultures had their own vampire myth.
Yeah.
Only a handful of people created something that was an elf. And then Tolkien made it his master race for his fantasy epic, and then they became the androgynous pretty boys in these 3 movies, which changed how we perceive epic fantasy.
Yeah,
and it went from there.
Well, it's important though. Again, it's important to observe when we're talking about expectation early on. It's important to observe when you're talking about expectation of elves, because they really like it's one of those things that it just kind of exists in the zeitgeist. and almost nowhere else.
Brice, I'm sorry, we just went on this whole thing.
Yeah.
No, I think what I want to do, because I will admit I haven't listened to any of the hate around the bull dude, and like, let's be honest, that's where the
We're gonna
hate
talk about
is
that
coming
next.
from. So I want the two of you to tell me what's wrong with this model.
All right.
Are we up with Are we at the last slide?
I'm gonna scroll down. So we're done talking about what's the artist distortion, which is like taking a thing that somebody else. So we're done with the artist distortion and moving on.
Yeah.
All right. So we got the bull. We got the bull god as a really bad
This is
rap
mostly
song.
new. Like I didn't have like I only put 2 pictures there.
Yep.
Just to show like some visual hallmarks. So just as a thing, and this is for, again, people who are listening just back as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
On a lot of the Alarith, on the Alarith stone, the Spirit of the Mountain, and the Alarith stone mage. Remember, you said that on those cheeks, those strips of metal which make the cheeks fatter. Remember?
Yeah.
They've done that before. There's a recurring thing if you look at the Frostheart Phoenix, and it's like, whoa, that city's a Sigmar. They designed it as a high elf creature. It has the same motifs. So if you look at they gave, if you build the Carriage Ryan on the Frostheart Phoenix, you can give it a helmet, and on that helmet they have I would have to put too many pictures into one slide just to show you there's this recurring thing of these strips of metal following or serving as the decoration of more centralized flat shapes. And they have here, like on the Phoenix, you have those bars of metal around, like almost supposed to be like, I think, right, the cheeks, like rays of sunlight. And they take that and put that as an influence, like on the Alarith stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's 1-to-1. Like, oh my God, this is that motif carried on here. There's just little essences here and there.
You kind of have these rays, these plumes coming back off the eyes on the Phoenix. We see those as more of a wave, which is more the Asian, the sort of Pan-Asian thing, is like the sun rays not necessarily beaming down straight, but coming down in waves, right? Continue.
So just as a few things before we I let so Brice, what did you want me to do? Sell you on the model?
No, I look at this model and I truly do not see one thing that's wrong with it as being a centerpiece for this elf army. It's not a high elf army. It's not whatever. It's this army, and this is the centerpiece. Obviously, Teclis too, but I don't see an issue. I see truly no issue with this model, and I want to know what they are.
So I went back to the trailer. I looked at a few things. I think they tried to do all of the above. It is not a living creature, but it has living textures. They are mountain spirits. This is a purely magical creature. We just don't know how it, I think a wizard has to basically will it into existence to come out of the mountain,
like an automaton that they animate with
sort of, and then but it is part spirit, part animal, because especially if you look at the arms and the hands, this is armor around a sort of living creature. It has this fur texture, but then its back, it's this almost sort of in miniature mountain range, which is its own sort of biome. So it's the trailer says it's a war cow made of rock. Now I get it, it's supposed to be a joke, because it's a war cow made of rock with a massive hammer. But so it's a living creature, it's a spirit, it's a construct, all rolled into one. Elves have always been at one with nature. We've been talking about this a lot with all of their companion animals. And one of the reasons we talked about where it's Mongolia and India, there's this reverence for the cow or the bull, which is also the minotaur or Minos in Greek. Mm-hmm. So there's this precedent for there to be a bovine animal deity, at least in some way or another, in these cultures which influence this stuff aesthetically. why they chose it specifically. It's like sometimes the artist could just, because the miniatures designers, as far as I understand it, they get first say at what the stuff looks like, and when they're creating something brand new, it's like, you know what do we want to do? Oh, we do a cow, and they come up with that, and they develop it, and if they like it, they keep going.
I bet you they sketched a dragon somewhere in there, or a bird somewhere in there. Like, I almost assure you there's, like, a rock as ROC, bird, right?
Yeah, but there's 2 other spirits still. Like...
Yeah, I understand that, and
Wait, there's 2 other spirits? Brice, this sounds like privileged elf player information. What do you mean there's 2
No, there's 4 spirits.
Yeah.
There's four tribes in the runic mandala.
Yeah.
There's the mountain, there is the river, there is the wind, and then there is the zenith. Presumably, but we don't know for sure, Selenar, which is called the spirit of Hysh, is the spirit for the zenith, which is the crown. Mm-hmm. Is that true? We don't quite know yet, but I think there's enough context there to say so. And then we have the mountain spirit, and we could get at a later date, which I think some people are holding out for, when we get stuff that emulates the river and the wind, which would be like, oh, there's our dragons and our birds. There's our dragons and our birds.
Yeah.
Or it's not, like, or it's another animal. You know.
This is that expectation thing, guys. Don't do this to yourselves. You just sit back and enjoy the roller coaster.
Yeah, like people saying, "Oh, I'm gonna wait for Tyrion because he'll be my high elf." He's not gonna be. It's gonna be very similar to this.
Vince was talking about when they did the hot take show, more laws of triangles, because there's the rune of the mountain. Yeah. When you take which is like almost like the Mason symbol.
Yeah.
So there's a triangle from the head to the 2 hands. Mm-hmm. There's a triangle for the 2 legs
the
up
posture,
to the
base.
Right. So it's
shoulders
it's
to
just
the
more and more triangles, because it's a high elf army. There's going to be a lot of symmetrical patterns everywhere, because they're just like that.
Well, like I have so many takes going on in my head right now. Even the like bonsai are forming little mini triangles. But I want to come back to this picture of Teclis on the box art. In the background, we have this face that's like kind of looking down. Is that supposed to be Tyrion?
No, that's his mount.
That's Selenar with either it's Paul Dayton's interpretation of the porcelain mask, or Selenar without the mask on.
Oh, that's so much cooler. Okay, sorry. All right, continue.
No, because
it looks sweet as fuck.
People thought that was Tyrion, but and that's also very Jin. Why did Jin, like, it's spelled DJIN?
Yeah.
Jin. Yeah.
Okay. That has like a very Jin like sort of classical interpretation with like the goatee or the soul patch.
The facial hair.
Right, the oversized earrings.
Yeah,
and how the the eyebrows are depicted.
The brow line.
It reads very early D&D sort of genie sort of thing to me.
It's awesome. Okay.
Right, and that's either Selenar without the mask on, or it's just how Paul painted the mask, and it's supposed to look like that, but made of porcelain.
Fair enough.
And people thought that was Tyrion, and it's like, Tyrion doesn't have a beard, dude. He probably won't. And he also, so that's just his companion.
So back on script here a little bit more. With this the bull titan, the mountain god. I think there's a cool, like, sort of synthesis and harmony between like the mountain, the magic, and the living creature, which is itself sort of like a metaphysical triangle. It seems very elfy to me.
They're in harmony with nature. It's just that the current biome where they are, that's the animal they bonded with, and they took in as their own.
Like, I almost wouldn't be surprised if like this is like the essence that they're channeling, and it just like takes the form or whatever, and it only interprets rough shapes of things going on because it's so big and cosmic, and so this is what you get. And there's a sort of magic logic to it for me that makes this pretty worthy. Plus, you've got those points of visual interest I talked about at the onset between, we talked about the dark mirror that Ossiarch Bone Reapers are for, Stormcast. This is like the light mirror of the Keeper of Secrets. This is like almost like a middle finger back to Slaanesh, which I kind of dig. I kind of dig that.
I'm with all of this, I'm just waiting for Malekith's Dark Elves, like when they redo Dark Elves, to just be so different. Because I posit, and this is coming from someone who loves High Elves and thinks Dark Elves are traitors to society.
Fair enough.
And they deserve all.
I mean, Malekith was right, but continue.
I know. Oh yeah, Chuck tells me every day. This is why
Malekith was the Phoenix King. Yeah, your people tried to corrupt the ritual and got punished for it. Continue.
Right. I'm waiting for when they subvert like the true like. I always thought Dark Elves was like a truly original idea where they took Tolkien's sort of Rivendell master race sort of wise immortal beings, but then made them twisted and
petty. Actually, kind of petty.
Well, yeah, and it's like Nagaroth is an equivalent to like certain depictions of hell. It's a civilization in which currency is like torture, manipulation, pain.
Yeah, very Dante's
like
Inferno.
Divine Comedy.
And I thought that always fascinated me. And I really enjoyed how they brought that, because most of the Dark Elf kits survived the culling because all of it was like being like was developed while the baby Age of Sigmar, and I want to see where they take the rest of like the Dark Elf sort of mythos and society with this Age of Sigmar treatment, because we already have an like I think that's going to be the dragon army. It's just going to be wicked and twisted looking dragons, because you can't do serpents, because Daughters of Cain have those. Like they have literal half serpents. They're like all of the Naga and the whole like Gorgon sort of cults. I want to see where they take Dark Elves after this, showing us what the sky's the limit for High Elves. What does that look like for probably the more original of the elf tribes, like something that Games Workshop really thought of and developed.
Well, it's like their IP. It's their IP, right? Like,
right. And they always give their bad guys, I would say, like a little more care.
Way more care.
I don't. Yeah.
Chaos is their baby, not. I'm sorry. Like Chaos is Games Workshop baby. It always has been. Not their quote unquote good guys. It's so obvious. I mean, it's poetic. The Chaos Warrior was kind of the first real Games Workshop thing.
Right.
You know, if I could give a middle finger to people talking about Sigmarites as Sigmarines, it's Space Marines ripped off the original Chaos Warrior, so Stormcast are just kind of bringing home that old.
Yes.
They're just bringing it home. It's just bracketing. So screw your lazy 40k takes. I mean, what's 40k?
It's so bringing it back to the battle cattle, the attack yak.
There's been a bunch of
divine
bovine. Bryce, what do you got to say about?
There's a list of them.
Yeah, it's a good list. And I know my favorite is probably Beaver of Secrets.
I don't know why. I just like beefer is funny as a intrinsically that word is funny. Beefer, because you're taking beef and then you're turning it into a verb.
But we know you can have beef, right? Like you can possess beef with someone, and that doesn't mean you have meat.
Anyway, Bryce, what are your thoughts on the on the what's its technical name? I've only ever called it by its fake names.
Alarith, Spirit of the Mountain.
Fair enough.
I do like the named one better, probably because of the paint job on it.
Well, it's got the reds and the it's got the earth tones in there. Yeah.
No, I like this is my favorite model from everything. Like this is it. It just hits every single thing I wanted it to. So I have nothing bad to say. Nothing really more to say than what you guys have said. It's just
this. I mean, I'm reminded of we saw that little like anklet, right? In the like the battle tone.
In the Dawnguard one, like the Dawn Riders. If you go back to the Dawn Riders image, you can see the ankles of it and the base of the Stone Wizard.
Yeah, I tweeted that shit 5 minutes after it happened.
But I remember your words, and we've said them a couple times, but I really want to highlight them. Like, because we were like, well, what is this? And I was going on, like, I want it to be a dragon, wizard, phoenix, I was just making up all this random shit. And you said very simply, I don't care what it is, I just want it to be different. You know, like, I just want it to be, it's going to be something I don't even know what it is. Like, you went on this, like, what you said to me in that moment is, like, it's going to be possibilities, the model.
Yeah.
And then we, like, see it, and when we saw this, I, like, flipped my table and ran around my house, not for me, for Brice. I'm like, hell yeah, he got his fucking thing! And that's why, like, when I, like, some of the noise was coming through, the first person I messaged was you. I'm like, tell me why these people are wrong if they don't like this. And, like, I sent you that text kind of immediately. It's Odin. Odin is here.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe that's part of why I'm so happy with what it is because I didn't go in thinking we were gonna get a dragon or a phoenix or, you know, like. And I think that's why people are so upset is because if I went in with that attitude, I would probably be sad. But I mean, just look at it. Like, if you didn't know what army this belonged to, and someone showed you this picture, you'd be like, "That's freaking cool."
You'd hear a guitar riff, just like in the background when you see the model. Yeah. No, it's
so.
Well, even like I'm reminded of like the cape picture, like way early on. That we have these sort of like double capes, and on this very very original like high elf cover, the last one. I'm sorry, who was the artist one more time, Martin?
Mark Holmes is the new artist.
The old
Mark
artist for the
Paul Dainton.
Paul Dayton art right here. With this cape sprawl here, and I bring it down. I'm like, this is a graphical match for the horns. And then it's already got the freaking mountain in the background. Hang on, real quick for those of you watching the visual form. Horns, mountain, cape, mountain. Like, you know, like my brain just like begins to short circuit at how it's thin. It's admittedly thin, but it's so cool. I mean, we don't even know. Like, yeah, it's a cow. Because the meme video. If they didn't release the meme video saying cows with weapons, people would have said it's a they'd have said something else, right? It's the difference between saying, does this smell like bananas? And what does this smell like? If I say, does this smell like bananas? You're going to go, yeah, it smells like bananas. Or you're a contrarian, you're going to go, no, it smells like walnuts because you're a contrarian. But I've already, like, shifted your perception by saying specifically the thing. Right?
Yeah.
So you're going to use that as your pivot point for your decision making. If they had just like released this sculpt in a vacuum, you just go, I don't know what it is, but it's awesome. Like, you just begin to go insane. And I can't unsee it at this point, but the base armor of all of the Lumineth is literally the Saiyan armor. It's got the shoulder pads. It's got the little like hip armor. The belt and the circular belt. It's like the Saiyan armor. And I'm not a weeb. I have an emote in Twitch here that will defend me. It's the Mr. Meth Not a Weeb. You get for subscribing. But like it's the Saiyan armor. They're just an army filled with Saiyan armor and skirts, and I just it's so much its own thing. It reads enough as elves for me, the non-elf player, and I will again eternally defer to other elf players. You know, my friend Sam is, for me, he's like the original elf perspective I often go to for anything elf. This is my original GM for tabletop RPGs. He's the guy who got me into Warhammer Fantasy Battle in the 6th grade. I'm now 35 years old, so it's been a long time. He's the guy who just like I went to him and he's like, they're sweet. And he's a man of few words, and if he just goes, they're sweet, you're like, oh. You know, you kind of like lean back away like, he said they're sweet. Like they got the stamp of approval.
The Scorsese thumbs up.
Yeah, the single thumbs up from Scorsese. Yeah, I'm like I don't know.
Someone you hold in that a similar prestige.
Yeah. They got like I don't need to have but that wasn't it. It's like I looked around and I saw people who were circling the 9s and the 10s on what they thought of this new army in my like close circle of friends, And just the same sort of logic that stops me from completely hating Tzeentch because, two of my favorite humans play Tzeentch. I go, if two of my favorite humans love Tzeentch, then they must not be all bad. And I feel that same sort of thing comes in. I'm like two of these absolute like hobby heroes and people I've had on RantCast before and opinions I respect. These were it for them. And I just go, yeah, that's all I need to know. And I'm sympathetic if you were expecting something else. I truly am. I don't do the gloating.
One corgi.
It's single corgi. I don't do the gloating takes against Tomb King players. Look at this Corgo. This is Max Corgo going on right now. Tricolor as well, but like a lot more a lot more of the black coloration than Mochi. Mochi's got a lot more of the tan.
His back is all black, like just black.
Oh, he seems like he's got some chunk too.
he's super skinny. He's really muscular.
Yeah.
Like, no fat at all.
All them walks
and working out.
Yeah.
This goes from the Warhammer show to the Corgi owner show.
So real quick, I'm running out of time, but I want to do what's left. Obviously, we've seen the wizard.
Yeah.
Do you think there's another kit or two kits? What do you think?
Ball thrower.
You think so?
Ball thrower. Yeah.
Is this hope or you think so?
I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a ball thrower because it's like what was classical, like the main things left. It's like, well, there's a great eagle, and they're ball throwers. I don't think we're gonna get a great eagle. We don't really need like things like great eagles in the game anymore. Like there's like more complex things that they can make instead of that. There's probably gonna be a hero like on a horse, so like you're just casual like noble on horse.
Yeah.
Because you need a leader. Like we haven't really seen the generic heroes yet. Like we've seen like the lady, the Cenari Cathalar, which is kind of like this sort of Greek seer who's holding this pot of aether quartz. Like they look like hot coals, but I think it's aether quartz.
And we've only seen like pieces of her, and then the one blurry picture that you could see.
Yeah.
I see Andrew looking confused.
I'm not the elf player. Continue. If this was vampires, I would suddenly just like galaxy brain know everything. And it was vampires. But continue.
We've seen like the Stone Wizard, and then we've seen Teclis and the Mountain King. We don't have like, is there a generic mage in this army? We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen a generic sort of lord like for the army, like your equivalent to Xantos.
Yeah, there's got to be at least one of those.
Probably like an Achillean king, I would say, is closer approximation. Where it's like you have a hero on a steed, like on a 60 mil.
Yeah, the Liege Cavalos is the non-named version of Xantos. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So you need your dude on a horse thing to just be like, I'm the regular HQ for this army that's going to show up and start collecting in like 2 years. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to denigrate it like that. I'm just saying like we need like the generic heroes. I think there's probably one more unit that's like a skirmisher unit. The question is it Wraithguard? I had a question from the very beginning, like Eltharion, like unless they really like the sculptor was just like, I'm going to make this thing. It's going to exist. I don't care if my boss says no. We're going to do this thing. Like the Ghost Armor.
Yeah.
Wraithguard and Eldar are robots with elf ghosts inside. And the closest analog to that is something like Eltharion, which is that Thousand Suns or Full Metal Alchemist style Ghost Armor. And so I think we're either getting a skirmisher unit like that.
Look, I'm trying to convince people I don't watch anime, and you just made a Full Metal Alchemist reference. Continue.
I don't even like Full Metal Alchemist, but it's a good visual reference for people.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting a bolt thrower as long as it's not as big as the fucking Mortek crawler.
If you want to sell me harder, make it as big as the Mortek crawler.
I don't want a tank.
No.
60 mil max.
I don't want a tank.
This is just your elegant, like elven sensibilities coming through. Make it huge and sweet.
Come on.
Right. No. So there's probably gonna be Boltar. There's probably gonna be some more generic heroes and maybe one more unit, and then we're done. Brice, go on. Like I know you're running out of time, so it's like.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's going to be an HQ. I could see I'd actually be surprised if there was one more unit. I think we'll see the 2 generic heroes, and I honestly think that's it. I think the rest is going to be.
Well, we don't have skirmishers. Like I think there needs to be a skirmisher unit in here somewhere.
You mean the cost 160 for 3 kind of guys, like?
Yeah, like or something like really just like so like your fast attack. You're like, where's the fast attack in this army? Because the cav are battle line, or like troop ish. You know what I mean? Like where's the
See,
where is it?
I said a while ago, the army, this is when we were still talking about, like, angel elves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I still would think angel elves would be pretty cool, the Razafon elves. But, like, the Eltharian animated ghosts and armor thing, the Malik from Vampire, or from, what is it, Legacy of Kain Blood Omen. The Malik is the paladin who gets cursed to be just an animated suit of armor. A unit of those is still, like, you wouldn't have to make a whole army out of it. Just to have a unit of them to where, like, I recklessly try to make the army out of them would be very much something I would welcome. Like what I'm trying to do right now with Necropolis Stalkers, where I'm like, I'm just going to run 30 of them. I don't care. Like, do, that would be a really cool touch. What do you guys think of...
Tristan, just touch on what Tristan just said in chat with the Deepkin. I tried to do that, and it doesn't really, like, compare.
What did Tristan say? I'm sorry, I can't.
He said, what if we compare it to the Deepkin release, like a bit more one-to-one? Deepkin or the Failed Project wouldn't make sense if they're closely related in the number of kits and ideas. But we've already passed that, right? Like, because there's not, obviously, Teclis is himself, but then, so this would be, the cow would be the turtle, the Namarti and the thralls would be the spear and the bows, but then the horses would be the eels. There's no equivalent to the hammers.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I think you can see, like, pieces of the Deepkin in this army done the right way, not as soul-eating bastards.
This is a good analogy is the army of Dr. Frankenstein versus the army of Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's who Teclis is now. Teclis is Dr. Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, Brice, do you think we're getting army scenery?
I do. Not.
I think we would see it already.
Yeah.
I
think if we were getting it, it would have been in that box. Because that box is supposed to be everything you need to start playing the army.
Army scenery.
Yeah, sorry, I paused a long time on my not. But no, I do not think we're going to get it. Because I do think it would be in that box, because the box is like the entry point to the army, and the terrain piece is the entry point to the army, right?
Right. So yeah, I agree. I hope we do get endless spells. I will say this, and this is just end with the thing on like Bone Reapers, because who better to ask about Bone Reapers?
None. No one.
Do you think the endless spells for the Bone Reapers are miniatures that they tried to make a unit in the Bone Reapers army, but they couldn't, and so it's like, we're just gonna make this like a summon instead? Is that's what those feel like to me? Like, I feel like those were supposed to be models.
Not the Shrieker. Certainly not the Shrieker.
Yeah.
No, the Shrieker is very clearly an endless spell.
Okay.
I could see the Nightmare Predator, but I think not so much a unit like being reduced to a sculpt, but a concept art. I could see it being like a concept art where they're like, this is really awesome, but like doing a full unit of it would be meh. Not so much like a failed unit, just like a concept art that they said, hey, keep exploring that because we figured out a way to put that in the game.
I asked that because
yeah, go on.
We've seen now endless spells, and I'm sorry, but I think that the Tzeentch endless spells are just reused assets from the Lord of Change kit that they just sized up in ZCAD and then just put on bases. Like the Lord of Change heads, like the staff, and like the book.
That's like the opposite direction of what I was talking about.
No, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that.
Yeah, go on.
So we have endless spells out there, which are like these weird either like objects or just twisted assets. Like they feel more primal. They don't feel like they are like a summoned model or a solo model. I think the Bone Reaper stuff is, and I'm curious as to what we get if we get endless spells. Like, do we? Just the Bone Reaper's endless spells have always like stuck with me, as like if oh yeah, they look fantastic. If you painted them like it was a regular model in your army, could you see those as like a solo, like a small monster? That's what I've.
The bird for sure.
Don't even mess with my brain.
With the bird could have been a unit of 3, right? You could have You could have
Well,
3 of those.
just one.
You could have 3 of those birds, as a unit.
Yeah.
Its size is in the weird shape where it needs to be bigger if it's a single monster, right? So like if they size that one up the 20% that we're taking away from everything else, then yeah, that could have been, we could have had a cool like little flying bird monster. And that would have been kind of cool for like Death, because we're not really known for like our flying birds by any means. That would have been a cool little take on the Death, which also lending a little bit of credence to your point. We have bird iconography across our entire army. We have little bird friends, little like vultures and little ravens and stuff everywhere throughout. It's possible we were supposed to have a bird monster or something, so I could kind of see that. But again, I really get the sense that with Bone Reapers, they were rounding down, not rounding up on an idea. They had an already great, awesome thing. Because Nightmare Predators, I could see 3 of those as a unit, as is out the box. I've seen the conversion where the guy chops off the arms and he gives them the Morghast swords. He's just dual wielding these 2 Morghast swords. I'm like, I want all my Morghasts to just be that instead. It's the coolest thing ever. And I'm not a guy who likes ghosts, but he's got just enough bones going on. Yeah, the Grim Reaper is cool because he's bones underneath a sweet shawl. I need the bones to bring it all together. Yeah, like Nightmare Stalkers. I actually had in my notes here to bring up, and you brought it up organically. Endless spells and terrain. Are we gonna get an Aether Quartz engine or something like that with this army?
I think Aether Quartz is going to play an element in the allegiance abilities at the very least. Is it going to be in the spell? Like
endless
for
spell
me,
or
I feel
terrain.
like
A terrain piece with like some Aether Quartz going on.
I'm with Vince. I wish army scenery would go away. I do not like it. I don't want to carry it around, especially if I want to take this army internationally. I don't want there to be army scenery. It takes part of your allegiance abilities away from you and makes it part of a fixed point on the table, which gets in the way of everybody.
And it causes issues, like the Bone Tide Nexus,
and now
dealing with that as a TO is unpleasant.
And now the Realm Shaper engine, which has our same deployment rules for our terrain piece, except their terrain is useless half the time on their gamble.
But I brought up Endless Spells specifically, and I wanted to bring up the Bone Reapers idea because the Bone Reapers are almost the exception.
Sorry, Tristan says Elf Crack Rock. Yes, I want Elf Crack Rock. Or the Astro Crag from fucking Guts.
Go on.
Sometimes I feel like endless spells are an afterthought. And sometimes I feel like models that couldn't quite make it elsewhere in the army get turned into endless spells. I really don't know how the design process works. And I'm sure it's different for every army, which makes it even more confusing to figure out a pattern. And I'm not sure what Elf's endless spell, are we even going to get, watch, we don't even get either. And then there's definitely no pattern. Everyone was there was a pattern where every army gets every Chaos army has army scenery, except for Tzeentch and Slaves to Darkness now. And I was like, but of course they're going to get army scenery. It's Chaos. And then they don't. So, every time you think there's a pattern, Games Workshop says, nope. So I'm really not sure what our endless spells are going to look like, but I think we definitely don't have scenery coming.
Brice, I'll let you mention, you kind of say what you're thinking. And
yeah, I could see endless spells, and I could see endless spells paying homage to some of the elves that we don't get, like a Swordmaster or something, like the
like a sweet
animated spirit of a Swordmaster or something something. I don't know. Obviously, it's just making stuff up, but I think there will be spells, because how do you have a Master of Magic like Teclis and not have endless spells?
So I think I think endless spells happen one of two ways, and this is a trend I have begun to notice, is either you get endless spells or you get to fuck with endless spells. And so, like, City of the Sigmar fucks with endless spells. Seraphon, who you're like, they should totally get endless spells, say, no blowback for endless spells, which is way better than having 2 mediocre spells and 1 situationally playable spell, which is pretty much the norm for all endless spells. It's like you have 2 shit ones, and then you have one that's, like, situationally good. I would way rather have no blowback to all the existing endless spells that I can take in my army, you know? Like, what a great rule that is for Seraphon. So I think with Lumineth, you're going to get one or the other. You're going to either fuck with endless spells in some manner. Teclis can resolve one endless spell per game, and it can never be removed, and it never has blowback. Something crazy and big, right? Maybe Teclis gets some sort of no caveat cast an endless spell from somebody else's army, which is what KO kind of got with their spell, with their Pokeball for an endless spell. There might be something like that in play, right? Like, I could see something like that in play where they get to manipulate endless spells. I really feel as a 100% new army, though, you get endless spells. And I would hope, because it's a 100% new army, the way that Ossiarch Bone Reapers is, you get the good ideas rounded up, not the bad ideas rounded down, you know? Like, you're going to get the, like, oh man, we couldn't find a way to make a Swordmaster work, so you're going to get, like, a fucking proto-ghost thing wielding just the Claymore, and the Claymore is like it's just like, it would eat the pendulum. Yeah, it would just, like, totally eat it because it's huge and it's sweet, and then you get the elf version of that, right? So I could see something like that, where they have some of these, like, existing concept ideas that didn't quite make it to, like, a unit or into the aesthetic, like, overall, but they're like, that's still a great idea. Hell, we'll make it a spell. I could see that being the route they go. I don't think it's a gimme that you get terrain anymore, because, like you said, Martin, it just doesn't seem to follow any rhyme or reason. People getting terrain at this point.
Like, that's what the sculptors decided to do. Yeah,
and Sculptor First is a fine direction, by the way. I don't mind. I justified it for the Bone Tithe Nexus, so I'm gonna stick to my guns on this one. I'm gonna stay on brand. If you're gonna go, we're a modeling company first. It starts with the models, and they have say. Then the rules kind of have to catch up with it and make it make sense. I'm fine with that, because as long as the sculpts always look great. You know what I'm saying? Like, I will continue to defend it as long as shit looks good. And then when stuff doesn't look good and we just have phoned in after phoned in model going yada yada yada, if it was all the pizza oven every time, I would just get rid of it all. But, I will take the Gloomspite, the Loon Shrine, because it looks awesome and it makes tables feel cooler. I will take the boats. I know you all hate the boats, but I like the boat as, like, a wreck on a table, and the Aether Seed, it feels like it ties in and it brings the Aether Seed to the table for that army, instead of just this, like, made-up concept that, like, has no representation and it would be impossible. I like the shipwreck. Yes, everybody listening, I like the shipwrecks that Idoneth Deep can get, because I like the notion of taking the Aether Sea and smashing it into your table and going, it's here. I like that, like, imperceptible becoming perceptible on the table. I defend faction terrain for the weirdest reason a rules competitive player might have, which is I like tables being more interesting and taking these fluffy concepts and crystallizing them and making them real for armies. But I also happen to play an army with absolutely no terrain to care about. I have grave sites for my LON, and then 2 armies that have great terrain. So I'm totally skewed and biased. I admit my bias, but again, I maintain if it looks great, do it. So if it looks great, do it. I can't even imagine. Are we gonna have, like, an Aether Quartz mine or something like that? Way to stick it to the dwarves. If you did. Some sort of extra mountain, the theory I have, I don't know that you're going to get terrain with Lumineth. I feel like endless spells are more guaranteed, are more plausible than than a terrain piece, because I foresee this being wave 1 of 3 more waves of more Lumineth stuff down the line. And 1 terrain piece that fits with this army coming out, and then also will fit with, 2 or 3 more iterations of it. That feels like a lot harder to juggle for me.
but like endless spells that are just like your awesome concepts of elves. Hell yeah. And you can always release more endless spells. They do it all the time. So that's my thought.
Yeah.
I think we're to the point where
y'all tell me what people should go watch, and you say where they can find you on the internet. So Brice, we're gonna start with you, man.
So you can find me, Moose Geek, on Twitter. That's pretty much all I do these days is Twitter. So, what people should watch? I feel like we're all running out of things to watch these days, and I've been doing a lot more reading and listening. Obviously, I have to plug the podcast because I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't. So, Playing and Slaying Show, we'll have a new episode out next week. But I've listened to a ton of Critical Role lately. I've almost caught up to season 2, and I've been watching a whole heck of a lot of HBO and Westworld, and it's just so good, man. I don't know if you guys are fans of Westworld or if you're not. I know some people didn't like the second season, but the direction that they've taken with this third season and what just happened in the last episode. Holy cow.
mind blown. No spoilers.
Yeah.
Please, but
yeah. No spoilers, but definitely check it out.
Check it out. All right. And do seriously check out Point and Slaying. No joke. Wisconsin, our content creators are better than your content creators statewide. So go listen to our stuff. And Ty, Josh, the crew there. They're just. I love the total gamer aspect they bring to the table. So go check it out. It's great. Plus, I sponsor the D&D segment.
You do.
Martin, where can they reach you, and what do you want to plug?
All right, so I'm on Instagram as The Wandering Prince, which is one word there, just The Wandering Prince.
Seems
on
very
Twitter,
elfy
I
to
am.
me.
It was like one of my first High Elf heroes. He was the long story. On Twitter, I am CV_consigliere, like in The Godfather. I'm also a mod on Facebook of the Age of Sigmar Lumineth Realm-Lords group under Luke. I'm sure Cinderfall or Luke is in the chat who can provide a link. We have cool, great content there. We always try and talk about and debate lots of navel gazing about toy soldiers, which happen to have pointy ears. As for what to watch, a lot of the art design stuff I talk about tonight, and inspirations for how I want to approach the army, not in terms of the artistic themes or sort of just the design philosophy, getting into the headspace of really taking your hobby to the next level. Get your hands on the extended edition of Fellowship of the Ring, and then just go watch the bonus features. And I mean from the beginning. First of all, it's 18 to 20 hours long. It's probably going to take you at least through, I don't know how much people sleep these days, but it will take you through a decent chunk of our stay-at-home time, because it's a lot of content. And I mean just go through from soup to nuts sort of feast of knowledge, and they talk you through everything. Why the book is important, adapting the book to a script, re-visualizing the script as storyboards, and then creating all of the special effects, the amount of work what a workshop did to make all of this stuff, from the costumes to the miniatures to just the scenery, and it's just full of hobby fuel.
Well, Helm's Deep was insanity.
And even before that, if you want to just talk about the miniatures that they made, because a lot of the miniature work is in a similar scale to Warhammer, and it's just full of hobby fuel. And I also think it's full of motivation to just try and put that little bit of extra effort into your army. No one's asking you to devote your entire life for 3.5 years on one army, which is basically what they did for Lord of the Rings, when they had hundreds of people working all 24 hours of the day. But I think that there's inspiration within there to just I think take your hobby in some way to the next level. It has for me. And so I think that's just something to go watch. It's not new. But it might be new for some. You might learn something from it.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah.
I talking about it tonight, where we kind of ended up on the LTR discussion, especially from the movie standpoint from you, it just reminded me of this entire era of my life. I had kind of forgotten how awesome it was. You know, like, I feel like I'm becoming way more cynical as I get older. And at that time, I didn't give a crap because there was no film on that scope. Let alone 3 films. And then you get the extended cuts, and that was an extra selling point to buy the bigger and bigger box set every time with more features and more deleted scenes. Like, something of that scope had never existed for me, the fantasy nerd, until that point.
And another thing to just keep in mind as a parting thought, because of those movies, it's like they're 20 years old. Not only did they wanted to use as many practical effects as possible, but certain things it's like you just cannot do it in the computer back then. And a lot of our hobby is scale modeling. We make like scale representations of these fantasy worlds with our hands and tools at our disposal to make these physical manifestations of things. And I think just taking the what they had to do to bring Lord of the Rings to life and thinking about that in your Warhammer hobby can lead to some crazy things. And there's already a lot of cool, crazy stuff all over the internet for Warhammer. But I think we can take it further. If you're like going back to the display board thing when I did that seminar with Anthony, and just
AOS
if you really
Coach,
want to be
on YouTube. AOS Coach shout outs, man. You can check that out with him.
And Brice is already working on an extra large Lumineth display board.
There it is. There it is.
Nice.
And you know I will be too. It's just a question is when, because I got to paint all the scenery for the can I just plug my GT if at all possible?
Of course, man. Of course.
All right. So right now, again, tickets are not for sale yet. We're planning to make an announcement sometime around June, depending on how COVID goes like that stuff. October 17th and 18th in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, which is about 20 minutes from Philadelphia on the New Jersey side. I'm going to be running my first ever tournament, first ever GT. It's going to be 32 people. There's going to be plenty of loot, prizes. A website is coming. I've been working on that. But any details if you're interested in coming all the way to New Jersey. I know it's not something a lot of people think about in this hobby. Feel free to reach out and I can give you more information about that. But right now it's going to be October 17th and 18th this year.
That's an optimistic, I shouldn't say optimistic. I would feel comfortable with that to begin planning around it. Like personally, I know we've heard, 6 to 18 months.
I just wanted to add, it's also because of like the Northeast, like in November, the big event is Du Bois, which is probably my favorite GT, which is but like most of us go to that. And then September is Nova. So I didn't want to step on the toes of like the gigantic events that all of us are going to. So October felt like the best bet to run an event, at least in our neck of the woods in America.
Also, so October is best month, second best month. April's best month because of my birthday. Second best month is October because of my favorite holiday.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but anyway, keep an eye out on details for that.
Yeah, right on. And shout outs to that D&D book on the shelf right behind Brice there.
Oh, and I got this right in front of me. Ty might have killed another character, so I've been hard at work on that story.
It's Killer GM, man. Killer GM. I'm gonna.
Yeah, you can listen to it on the podcast. We'll talk about it, but it was my fault this time.
This time.
Yeah.
And I bring up D&D because next week RantCast is going to be doing something a little bit different. We're actually going to be talking about RPGs more exclusively. So we're going to be talking about Soulbound's coming out in Age of Sigmar RPG. There's some Warhammer Fantasy Battle RPG stuff. We're talking a little bit about that. We're going to talk about other systems, and I've got a panel, 3 wonderful humans from a spectrum, one from my own gaming group, Katie. She played the assassin previously, the ranger in my current campaign. She's going to come on and tell you what it's like to be in my games. I talk a lot about RPGs. I don't talk a lot about RPGs on RantCast from a sort of deeper look, so doing something a little bit different, but I think it's poignant on account of how we're all isolated right now. I think RPGs are a really great way to connect with folks because for Brice, you got a word there?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's ironic that you say that, and yet you haven't set up another one shot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll get another. I'll do another one shot. Brice, you're in because we gotta solve the trilogy of. I mean, because he's died too, and he was in the future. So he died in the past, and he's in the future. We need to figure out what happened in the present. So I need to do like we did what was it? We did was it 90s, right? And we did a flashback to the 70s.
Yep.
So we got to do the 2020s, I think.
Yep.
And then and the 2020s will give you clues as to what happened after he died in the fucking 70s, but was there in the 90s.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that'll be really great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed this third installment of the Aelfisode. There will be one more Aelfisode. I can promise you. There will be the rules.
At least.
At least. It's true.
There'll probably be a fifth where we do an army review of mine and Martin's armies, and we'll have them pictures, and we'll talk about So there's at least two more.
Look. The Aelfisode is just a fixture of RantCast. I'm sorry. I might need to get like an Orcasode in here.
Well, yeah. Well, every episode is a Bone Reapers episode.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Well, that's the thing, and I know I'm on closeout here, but the reason that Lumineth really struck me to do, even though I'm not a Lumineth player, is, I mean, it's really kind of you two guys. Like, I saw a lot of the conversation going on about Lumineth that I saw around Ossiarch Bone Reapers. And prior to that point, like, okay, IDK came out and like, we thought it was an April Fool's joke, and then they actually released it. And these 100% new armies that have come out, they haven't had this type of discussion the way Bone Reapers did, and the way I think Lumineth even like leveled up. They took it even further. Because usually it's just like, oh yeah, new army, sweet. Oh, hey, not for me, whatever. This is the one where it's like, it was supposed to be for me, and fuck you that it's not. Like, and I was just like, what is going on? So I just thought it was important to talk about it from a passion standpoint, because passion is really what drives me in Age of Sigmar. You know, I can be passionate for things, and what I respect in other people isn't the thing, it's the passion. So, and this is an army that people are passionate about on both sides. So speaking of both sides, I'm going to have Tom Lyons just confirmed on the 23rd as well. So we have two great RantCasts coming up, talking a bunch about RPGs, and Tom counterpointing everything I said tonight. I'm kidding. Although you might have to bring your tinfoil hats. I hear he really wants to talk about something crazy. But
yes, he always wants to talk about something crazy.
It's true. No, it's Chuck Moore's gonna be on too. It's gonna be a great episode. We're gonna talk about some stuff, and you might be surprised to find out what it is. Anyway, checking. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. You're the show within the show. Thank you to both my guests, Martin, Brice. You're some of the greatest amongst us. Thank you so much. Let's do this again. Aelfisode 4. Aelfisode.
Yeah.
Well, this was Aelfisode's Revenge. So next it's like Electric Boogaloo. I lose track of the sequels. Good night, everybody.